Chapter 799. The electric arcs brought by the exploding thunder and lightning even touched Gadotsi and the others who were high in the sky. Standing on the ground constructed by Wuming's mental power, everyone could feel the electric arcs caressing their skin. Wah-dash. What? What is this? Because she was an ordinary person, Gadotsi's hair stood up because of the electric arcs. He reached out and placed his hand on Gadotsi to eliminate the electric arcs on her body, then Wuming explained. One of the authorities I got after killing the gods. How is it? Not bad, right? Wuming was quite satisfied with the show his original body had put on. Huh? Assassin, your authority? But you didn't do anything? Gadotsi was stunned. Are these all the handiwork of the senior Villo? Matthew thought it was the Lion King's doing. Of course, it's my handiwork. Whether it's this godlike flood or this sudden explosion of thunder and lightning, it's all the handiwork of my original body who is with the Lion King. However, Wuming's words stunned everyone. You mean, you're not the real Villo in front of us now? Da Vinci asked simply. You can understand it that way, but I have a connection with my original body. At the current very close distance, all my feelings can be transmitted to my original body in real time, so now you're talking to the real me. After a brief explanation, Wuming showed a surprised expression as if he had just reacted. By the way, didn't I say before that I'm not the original body? Of course not. Gadotsi and Matthew said in disdain. Even tranquil Hassan could not help but nod. Really, are they here to fight or to play? Hassan of all faces had a headache about the current situation. I feel the same way, cursed wrist Hassan agreed. Anyway, it's all because of your teleportation portal, assassin. You send us to the wrong place. Speaking of this, Gadotsi rolled his eyes at Wuming. But didn't you guys also profit from the disaster and learn a lot from Sherlock Holmes? Wuming smiled. Why does Senior Villo know so much? Matthew was puzzled by Wuming's knowledge of their whereabouts. Because after you left, I had a chat with Holmes. This was why Wuming came out of the sandpit at the entrance of Atlas Courtyard. I see. So, when Holmes said that someone would bring us to the great shrine of Ramses II, that person was actually you, right? Da Vinci was very sure of it through the available clues. You're right. I have to say, Holmes is indeed a detective. Just by reasoning, he guessed that I would appear in Atlas Courtyard. Wuming recalled the time when he asked Sherlock Holmes, who had a face full of, "You really came, why would he be so certain that he would come?" Sherlock Holmes had said this. You can't let Tachika Fujimaru ignore you after the wrong teleportation. You must pay attention to Tachika Fujimaru. This was what Wuming saw Holmes said with a smug look on his face. However, even the three-pointed Hermes could not track him. Wuming did not believe that the detective was really sure just by guessing. The reason why detectives were called detectives was that they were not defined by guessing, but by clues and reasoning. In addition, Wuming knew that there were other ways to determine whether a person was safe, so Wuming's statement did not work. Then, under Wuming's threat of force, Holmes told the truth. There is a problem with the command incantation on the back of Tachika Fujimaru's hand. There was no doubt that Wuming had discovered the special command incantation on the back of Gadotsi's hand. Look, the defense of the great shrine is broken. Arash, who had been paying attention to the defense of the great shrine, suddenly spoke. Arash's shout pulled Wuming back to reality from his memories. Then, Wuming followed everyone's gaze. The monstrous waves that were originally blocked by the invisible wall, now with the help of thunder and lightning, successfully broke through the invisible defensive wall. The sea of sand mixed with thunder and lightning instantly rushed into the shrine complex, swallowing countless shrines until they were crushed. Assassin, will the people here be okay? With Wuming's violent means, Gadotsi was worried about the Egyptian people who lived between the shrines. When the Sun King descended, he moved the territory under his rule, which meant that not only the shrines, but also the Egyptian people ruled by Ramses II moved here. When Gadotsi and the others came to look for the Sun King, they had a brief interaction with the Egyptian people here. The Egyptian people also helped to move the food and water they obtained from the Sun King into the car built by Da Vinci. Is that so? When you came, were there any ordinary people here? Wu Ming pondered and began to recall. Assassin, don't tell me you don't know that there are ordinary people here? Gadotsi was shocked. However, Wu Ming shook his head regretfully. I can only tell you that whether it was before I came to look for the Sun King or now, I didn't find any traces of ordinary people here. After Gadotsi and the others left the desert, when Wu Ming came to talk to the Sun King, Wu Ming didn't find any traces of Egyptian people here, not even traces of life. Wu Ming, who had never seen an Egyptian person, originally thought that Ramses II didn't have any of his people here. However, now that Gadotsi and the others said so, Wu Ming realized that the ordinary people must have disappeared after Gadotsi and the others left and before Wu Ming came to look for the Sun King. If Wu Ming knew this earlier, he would have discovered that something was wrong with Ramses II. However, this was also Wu Ming's fault. After all, an Egyptian pharaoh who always talked about the king of all kings, how could there be no Egyptian people in his territory? How could? Matthew froze for a moment. That's impossible. There were a lot of people when we came. Gadotsi also began to worry. Gadotsi and the others didn't suspect Wu Ming, they were simply worried about the missing Egyptian people. At this time, Da Vinci spoke. I'm afraid it's the work of the unknown enemy this time. As the person who came here with Gadotsi and Matthew, Da Vinci had the most right to speak. If the current unknown enemy is the same as what the Vilo told us, then it's not surprising that there are no ordinary people here. Why? Gadotsi expressed that she was stupid. If the other party is really King Solomon's people, then it's their duty to come here and clean up the humans. The reason why the Sun King cooperated with the Lion King and attacked the people of the mountains was to clean up the last place where there were a lot of humans in this singularity. Since the other party wanted to clean up the humans, it was normal to clean up the humans in front of them first. How could? Matthew's face was full of disbelief. Did that mean that the warm-hearted Egyptian people who helped them carry food and water had been killed? However, things may not be as bad as you think. Chapter 800. The person who spoke was naturally Wu Ming. I once spoke to Ramses II. I could tell that the Ramses II at that time wasn't Guy, Solomon's men in disguise. Ramses II's aura as the King of Kings wasn't something anyone could imitate. Even the demon god Pillar or Gidia wouldn't be able to do so. No matter how much a cat roared, it wouldn't become the king of beasts. At that time, Ramses II's people had already disappeared. Therefore, Wu Ming was more inclined to. Ramses II knew that he didn't have long to live, so he sent his people back to their original era. That's what you mean, Vilo, right? Da Vinci was indeed a genius. He thought of the same thing as Wu Ming. That's exactly what I mean. Wu Ming nodded matter-of-factly. After knowing that nothing might have happened to the Egyptian people, Gadotsi and Matthew couldn't help but heave a sigh of relief. However, we still have to see the person involved to know the outcome, Wu Ming said as he looked at the great temple on the ground. The lightning sand sea that had drowned the entire temple complex retreated like the tide, and the temple complex was once again exposed to the sunlight. The current state of the temple complex wasn't destroyed by the lightning sand sea as everyone had imagined, but most of the buildings were already in shambles. The temple collapsed, the pyramid was damaged, the stone tablet was broken, almost none of the buildings were intact. Even the huge pyramid in the center where Ramses II was located had signs of large amounts of stone falling off from the bottom. The original desert also reappeared after the lightning sand sea retreated. Its dry appearance made it hard to imagine that it was a vast ocean just a moment ago. Everyone was shocked. This time, they were once again shocked. Wu Ming's move wasn't any weaker than the lightning sand sea from before. After all, it was easy to splash water on the bedsheets, but it wasn't easy to retrieve the water that had splashed on the bedsheets, and even restore the bedsheets to a state where they hadn't been affected by the water. It was no joke to say that spilled water couldn't be retrieved. Facts have proven that the best way to deal with enemies with the Divine Hall is to launch a powerful attack on the Divine Hall from the outside. After all, Wu-ming was also someone who owned a shrine. He was quite satisfied with the current situation caused by his attack on the Ramses II shrine. Except for the huge pyramid with Ramses II at the center, the other temples were all unusable. Although the largest pyramid could still be used, it had suffered quite a bit of damage from Wu-ming's lightning sand seas attacks. Simply put, it was still on the brink of destruction. Lancelot should be here soon, Wu-ming said as he looked into the distance. They saw a group of armored cavalry riding on warhorses galloping towards them at an extremely fast speed. Due to the trampling of the horses' hooves, a large amount of dust was created behind the group. Assassin, didn't you tell Lancelot that there would be a flood here? Gadotsi poked Wu-ming. Of course. Otherwise, how could he have cooperated with us in advance? I can't send all his troops into the sky. That would be very hard on me. Wu-ming shrugged helplessly. After all, with so many people, even if Wu-ming's mental strength was very strong, he wouldn't be able to withstand it. When he parted ways with Lancelot in the Atlas courtyard, Wu-ming told Lancelot that there would be a flood here later. When the flood receded, he could charge over and meet up with the Lion King. As for why Lancelot's troops were needed, it was because they were the last troops of the Holy City. Their purpose was naturally to deal with the enemy in front of them. Ah! A large group of Sphinx rushed out from there. Matthew saw countless Sphinx rushing out from the entrance of the central pyramid. So that's how it is. He's using human wave tactics to counter human wave tactics. Da Vinci finally understood why Silent Wonder had asked Lancelot to bring his troops over. Let's go, everyone. Let's conquer the last enemy. Yes. Everyone responded. On Wu-ming's side, after the Thunder Sand Sea retreated, Wu-ming sent himself, Artoria, and Guinevere to the ground using a portal. Lancelot was leading his troops not far away from Artoria. When he saw Wu-ming and the other two, the solemn knight stopped. Lancelot was the only one who continued to gallop toward Artoria. Your Majesty. Lancelot, who quickly dismounted, knelt on one knee. For a moment, he didn't know what to say. Lancelot believed that Artoria must have known that he had defected to Wu-ming's side. He was a traitor who had betrayed them twice. Would the king still accept him? There's no need to say more, Lancelot. I have seen your merits and demerits. However, your merits cannot offset your demerits. Therefore, you need to redeem yourself. Your Majesty, please give me your orders. Lancelot held Alandet with one hand and stabbed it into the sand. His other hand was on his knee on the ground. He lowered his head and looked like he was waiting for his orders. Kill the enemy. The crisp order and the cold tone made Lancelot excited. Yes. After accepting the order, Lancelot stood up and mounted his horse. He walked in front of the solemn knight and raised Alandet high. Looking at the Sphinx army that had begun to spread toward them, Lancelot ordered. For the king. Solemn knight. Everyone, charge. Oh. Nay. The solemn knight roared, and the warhorse under him neighed. Because the direction was wrong, the knights followed Lancelot in a circle and charged toward the Sphinx army. In an instant, the solemn knights led by Lancelot clashed with the Sphinx army like a raging fire. Let's go. It's time to deal with the real enemy, Wu-ming said and opened the portal. The defense of the temples was basically ineffective, so the portal could be used again. Bypassing the Sphinx army through the portal, Wu-ming, Artoria, and Guinevere came directly to the entrance of the largest pyramid in the center. At the same time, a portal appeared beside Wu-ming and the other two. Wu-ming's avatar, Gadotsi, and the others walked out of the portal. There are two of you. Seeing Wu-ming on the opposite side, Gadotsi shouted in surprise. That. Your Majesty Lion King. Matthew was quite reserved with Artoria who was beside Wu-ming. Although they were on the same side now, Matthew was still a little reserved with Artoria. You don't have to be so polite. I remember your name is Matthew, right? Yes, Your Majesty Lion King. Matthew stood up straight like a soldier who was being inspected. If Galahad can give you the power, then you have to bear the burden of carrying this shield. What answered Artoria was Matthew's powerful voice. Yes. Your Majesty, I will. At this time, a voice that Gadotsi, Matthew, and Da Vinci were familiar with came. You still have time to catch up. The king is right. You are a bunch of trash that needs to be abandoned. Chapter 801. Who's this scoundrel? Artoria couldn't stand such a sneaky guy, not to mention that the other party had interrupted her conversation with her old subordinate. He really didn't take her seriously. If Wu Ming hadn't been holding Artoria's hand since the beginning, she would have slashed him with her holy sword. Who's that voice? Matthew looked in the direction of the temple pyramid in disbelief. Could it be? Gadotsi gritted her teeth. Along with everyone's gaze, a figure in green clothes and a green hat walked out from the entrance of the pyramid. Lev Lenore, it's really you. Da Vinci frowned. Long time no see, Tachika Fujimaru, Matthew Killet, Leonardo da Vinci, and... Lev cracked open his mouth and smiled ferociously. Finally, he looked at Wu Ming. Our sworn enemy, the Dragon of Origin. The Dragon of Origin, Artoria frowned. She naturally knew that Wu Ming was the Dragon of Origin, but Guinevere was puzzled. Beside him, Da Vinci didn't show much surprise, but his eyes showed that he was thinking about something. Hassan and Arash didn't know anything about this so-called Dragon of Origin, so they were confused. Gadotsi and Matthew, who came into contact with this term for the first time, were also puzzled, but they knew one thing, and that was, the term Dragon of Origin undoubtedly referred to Wu Ming. Sure enough, I didn't kill you back in Winterwood. Wu Ming didn't care that Lev had exposed his identity because it didn't matter to Wu Ming whether his identity was exposed or not. If it weren't for the lack of a good opportunity, Wu Ming would even tell Gadotsi and the others personally. After taking 2 steps at the entrance, Lev patiently explained to Wu Ming. No, you really did kill me back then. But like I said, we 72 demon god pillars are one. If you can't instantly kill us as one, I will be able to revive indefinitely. Although Wu Ming knew that he couldn't kill Lev that way, seeing Lev being so arrogant now, Wu Ming was really unhappy. However, Lev had another advantage, which was that he was quite qualified to be a tool to obtain information. Where's Osmentis? Wu Ming tried to glean information. Of course it's gone. That arrogant bastard wants to control our demon god pillars. Apart from our king, no one can control us. Lev became furious, and his face even began to distort. But in the next second, Lev's distorted face returned to its original state, looking very much like a gentleman. But he has already received the punishment he deserved. I have to say, in terms of a nourishment for the demon god pillars, that guy is quite qualified. It can even be said that he's a high-quality nourishment. Straightening his collar, Lev nodded with satisfaction. In that case, Ramses II's spiritual base was used as nourishment for summoning the demon god pillars, Wu Ming thought to himself. Gadotsi and Matthew, standing beside Wu Ming, besides feeling sorry for Ramses II's sacrifice, they were also concerned about the whereabouts of the Egyptian people and the safety of Niticles who had returned here. Lev. What happened to the ordinary people here? Are they still alive? Gadotsi asked. And Miss Niticles? How is she? Matthew also roared at Leviticus, those trash that need to be dealt with. I have to praise that guy again. That guy actually sent them away before we completely descended. Otherwise, even if they were trash, with that number, we could still summon another demon god pillar. Lev shook his head regretfully. Just as Da Vinci and Wu Ming had guessed, the Egyptian people had already been sent away by Ramses II. After confirming that the humans were fine, Gadotsi and Matthew truly heaved a sigh of relief. Then what about Miss Niticles? Matthew repeated. Needless to say, of course she's turned into nourishment for the demon god pillars like her respected nourishment king. Ha 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 ha. Lev laughed happily. He thought of Niticle's futile resistance in the end. It was like an ant that was about to be crushed to death. Moreover, when he thought of Chaldea's master showing a sad expression, Lev was extremely happy. The facts proved that Lev was right. Gadotsi and Matthew did show a sad expression. Lady Nitoclis, thus, it was confirmed that Sun King Ramses II and Pharaoh Nitocles had all left. Unlike Matthew and Gadotsi's sadness, Da Vinci found new information through Lev's words. You said, let one more demon god pillar appear, before, right? That is to say, there are quite a few demon god pillars descending, right? Everyone looked at the huge pyramid where Lev was at. After all, this was the only place that was most likely to hide a demon god pillar. Leonardo da Vinci, your brain is still working so fast. Lev revealed a creepy smile. I will deny the sky, deny the earth, the storm will destroy everything, and the rain will cover everything. With this supreme divine power, I will make everything in the world bow and kneel. Wu Ming finished his words in an instant, and terrifying dark clouds gathered above the pyramid. The information that he needed to know was basically all, so Lev was useless to Wu Ming. There was no room for discussion. A gust of wind began to howl crazily, and everyone's clothes were rustling. Some of the ruins of the temple on the ground and the sand in the desert were rolled up and flew into the sky. Gadotsi even had to be held by Matthew to prevent her body from being blown away. The Solemn Night army and the Sphinx army that were fighting couldn't help but stop. The power of the wind, this is a power that doesn't belong to us. Although he said so, Lev still looked at Wu Ming calmly, and didn't panic. Come on. With Wu Ming's shout, a huge and terrifying tornado mixed with debris and sand appeared right above the pyramid. In an instant, the storm was like a meat grinder, wrapping and chewing the entire pyramid. The scattered ruins buried the motionless Leviticus. At a very close distance, everyone was about to be blown away by the wind. Except for Wu Ming, Artoria, and Hassan who had shelter from the wind, everyone else was struggling to support their bodies, squinting their eyes, and looking uncomfortable. The Solemn Night army was blown off their horses one by one because they were riding on horses. The Sphinx, on the other hand, was a beast with claws. They lay down on the ground and grabbed the ground with their claws, escaping the disaster. Ah! Guinevere couldn't hold on and was blown away in an instant. Pa! Lev grabbed Guinevere's arm and spun him in his arms. When Wu Ming wanted to touch this transformation, a foreign land happened. The temple pyramid exerted its last remaining heat and perished together with the tornado that came from the incarnation of God. The tornado dissipated and released the last trace of air to the surroundings. The sky that was originally covered by dark clouds was clear again. The sun shone on the ruins in front of everyone, but no one felt the warmth of the sun. Instead, a creepy feeling came from the bottom of their hearts. Chapter 802. Boom! The ruins of the pyramid in front of everyone exploded in an instant, and large and small stones sputtered into the sky and around at a speed comparable to bullets. However, this little bit of damage couldn't hurt anyone at all. Wu Ming instantly pulled out the meteor silver from the golden ripples that had already been opened. He swung it fiercely, and then swung it again at the sky. 2 mana sword auras instantly annihilated the stones that were sputtering towards everyone. However, there were still some places that Wu Ming couldn't take care of. The Solemn Knights and the Sphinx army who had fallen off their horses were attacked by stones falling from the sky. However, because the Sphinx wanted to take the opportunity to kill the Solemn Knights who had fallen off their horses, they inadvertently became the shield of the Solemn Knights. Although some of the Solemn Knights were hit by the stones and were injured or even killed, most of the bullet-like stones were blocked by the Sphinx. Naturally, this didn't cause much damage to the Sphinx, but the Solemn Knights got a chance to catch their breath. They immediately got up and fought with the Sphinx again. As for the horses, they were either killed by the Sphinx army or smashed to death by the bullet-like stones. Although the Solemn Knights' speed was reduced due to their conversion from cavalry to infantry, their defense was more perfect. In addition, with Lancelot leading the team, the Sphinx army was at a disadvantage from the beginning, and now they were still at a disadvantage. However, neither Wu Ming nor Lev had the time to care about the Sphinx and the Solemn Knights. For them, the enemy in front of them was the most important. After the ruins exploded, the things hidden in the ruins emerged. 3 huge pillars full of terrifying eyes broke out of the ground like new buds, shooting straight into the sky. The demon god pillars Floros, Yaman, and Barbados appeared. Ha 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 ha. Ha 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 ha, ha ha ha. The 3 demon god pillars let out different laughter, which made the followers and Gadotsi feel uncomfortable. The Sphinx and the Solemn Knights were also affected. However, Wuming wasn't afraid. He was immune to it. Sure enough, without Ramses II, you can't control the temple at all. Seeing that the temple had been destroyed so easily, Wuming was very sure of it. If Ramses II's grand shrine was so easily breached, then Ramses II would lose face as a top-level servant. In fact, Wuming's guess was correct. It was precisely because Ramses II's spirit base had been sacrificed that no one could control the temple. However, because the demon god pillar that appeared contained Ramses II's spiritual base, the great temple of Ramses II didn't disappear because of the news of its master. However, even if Ramses II's spiritual base appeared, the demon god pillar was unable to control the great shrine. It could only let the great shrine defend itself against attacks. This was also why the great shrine had never attacked Wuming and the others. So what? Whether it's the Sun King or the Lion King here, you are all just chess pieces on my chessboard. And my mission is not to eliminate you. Eliminating the humans in this singularity is not the decision of our king, but the decision of the demon god pillar. Flolos was quite proud to provide Wuming with information. To put it simply, no matter what, their demon god pillars wouldn't suffer any losses from this singularity. As long as they could cause trouble for Wuming, they would make a profit. Enough, Flolos. You've said too much. Demon god pillar Barbados spoke to stop Flolos from continuing. What does it matter? Anyway, they are going to die. Even if they know our plan, what can they do? Flolos didn't care. Prioritize eliminating the enemy. But Yaman was quite serious. As a demon god pillar, tool, it was qualified. In an instant, on Yaman's golden body, the flashing eyes emitted thunder. He really did it when he said it. The followers relied on their own abilities to dodge. Gadotsi was held by Matthew, Guinevere was held by Wuming, and everyone jumped back to avoid Yaman's thunder. However, the demon god pillar Yaman's lightning was like a straight river, covering everything in front of it. And it just so happened that the Sphinx army and the Solemn Knights were in this straight line. Wuming couldn't care less about whether Lancelot was dead or not. Wuming felt that something was wrong, not because of the 3 demon god pillars, but because Wuming felt that Flolos was planning something. Because even if the opponent had 3 demon god pillars as a fighting force, in Wuming's view, it was just sending food to him. What Flolos said about not seeking to take advantage, only to not suffer losses, in Wuming's view, didn't quite fit the cunning image of Leaf. So, Wuming looked at Guinevere in his arms. Guinevere, you should leave first. This isn't a place you can interfere with. This was naturally not the time to be stubborn, so Guinevere nodded as a matter of course. Okay, Villo Big. Before Guinevere finished speaking, Wuming abandoned Guinevere. Wuming's clone instantly hugged Guinevere and rushed into the portal that had already been opened. Immediately, Wuming's eyes shrank. Sure enough, Flolos, your goal wasn't us from the beginning. Wuming's clone took Guinevere to the West Village. And there, a demon god pillar just happened to appear, and it had already begun to wreak havoc. So, Flolos's plan from the beginning was to wipe out all the humans in this singularity. As Wuming guessed, Leaf was a smart person. He had always been targeting this singularity. Whether it was invading Ramses II, cooperating with Artoria to attack the mountain folk, or finally launching a thunderous attack on the holy city, as Flolos said, you are all my chess pieces. The mountain folk's survival, Wuming's attack on the holy city, and Artoria's loss of the holy spear were all part of Flolos's plan. As for imitating Ramses II's attack, demon god pillar Yaman could obviously do it. The thunderbolt that destroyed the holy city should also be released by demon god pillar Yaman. There's nothing we can do now that we've been discovered. Flolos said emotionlessly. Increase the intensity of the destruction, my comrades. In an instant, thunderbolts, heat rays, and poisonous fog poured out. The range was so wide that Gadotsi and the others couldn't dodge at all. Even Lancelot, who survived not far away by relying on Alandet, was affected. Gate, portal. Wu Ming opened the portal in an instant and teleported Gadotsi, Matthew, Da Vinci, Arash, Hassan, and Lancelot away. Their destination was naturally the West Village. Only Artoria and Wu Ming remained here. He and Artoria dealt with the 3 demon god pillars while Gadotsi and the others went to rescue the West Village. Wu Yan's plan was completed. Chapter 803. Originally, there were many humans in this singularity. For some reason, the Lionheart King, who seemed to be a fake demon, was cruel and heartless. The Lionheart King, who defeated the Lionheart King, wantonly slaughtered those who could not be chosen because he chose the pure ones. The Gorilla Knight's slaughter caused the human population to decrease. The Egyptian people in the desert were sent back to their original era by Ramses II. The chosen pure ones were stored in the Holy Tower in the center of the Holy City. It was destroyed by Yaman's lightning and the population decreased again. Currently, it was unlikely that there would be any humans in the wilderness. Even if there were, they would be people who would die of hunger and thirst soon. Of course, it was also possible that they had already died because the human population decreased. In other words, apart from the mountain people gathered in the West Village and the refugees hidden by Lancelot, there was no one else in this singularity. It was still the same sentence. The reason why the burning of humanity could last for a while was not only because of the existence of Chaldea, but also because of the remaining humans in the singularity. With the disappearance of humans, the singularity had completely collapsed, and humanity could no longer be saved. We were tricked by you, Flawless. They were too focused on the enemy in front of them, and neglected the little operations of the enemy behind them. However, the West Village had Abanti, Giliel, and Osriel. Although it was possible that they could not destroy the demon god pillars temporarily because of protecting the villagers, the demon god pillars should not be taken advantage of, so there was no need to worry too much. The most important thing was the refugees hidden by Lancelot. Wu Ming was afraid that the demon god pillars would also appear there. After sending Gadotsi and the others to the West Village, Wu Ming's doppelganger gave a simple explanation, and immediately used the teleportation gate to go to the rather secluded place where Lancelot hid the refugees. However, through the doppelganger's information, Wu Ming's expression was very ugly. The demon god pillars had also appeared there. Moreover, it seemed that the people there were used as sacrifices to summon them. Noticing Wu Ming's expression, Flawless was quite happy. How is it, Origin Dragon? I didn't lose out this time no matter what. I never thought that the nourishment would be so great that it could actually make so many of our demon god pillars appear. Since it has appeared, we have to do some delightful things. Ha ha ha. Clearly, the multiple demon god pillars were due to Ramses II's powerful spiritual base. Floros was very happy now. Even if it would be killed later, it did not matter. Flawless understood that as long as Wu Ming was there, these demon god pillars would definitely be eliminated. Flawless was well aware of this. But as Floros said, it was impossible for it to lose. After all, even if he left it alone, this singularity was just that. However, as long as it messed up a little, as long as it could gain a little bit of advantage, Flawless would have profited. If Floros' plan succeeded, the singularity would disappear, and the singularity would die. Then, there would be no hope for humanity. I won't make a loss, but I might make a profit, and I might even make a lot of money. This was what made Floros happy. Suddenly, a sun appeared in a place far away. It was the refugee gathering place where Wu Ming's clone was. The infuriated Wu Ming directly sent a sun incarnation over there, burning the demon god pillar phoenix that the humans had used as a sacrifice to summon it to nothing. It died in the flames. How ironic was that? However, it still could not eliminate Wu Ming's hatred for Floros. Excalibur. When Wu Ming was distracted, Artoria had already released her noble artifact. Along with the shout of her real name, the the demon god pillar, Yaman, disappeared. Queen Artoria was different from when she was young. Even if she lost her holy spear, Artoria was still a powerful lion king with a holy sword in her hand. Yaman's thunder could not resist the light of the planet. In the golden light, the golden Yaman disappeared. Your heart is a little messed up. Artoria looked at Wu Ming. No matter what happened, Artoria's heart was still as water. At most, her heart would beat faster when she was with Wu Ming. As a warrior, maintaining a stable heart was the most important thing. Skaha had also taught Wu Ming about this. This was the most basic thing, and Wu Ming had lost it. Wu Ming laughed at himself and began to activate his relic, real name Liberation. The meteor silver was damaged and turned into a golden light sword. The light it released instantly covered the demon god pillar, Babatos. Excalibur. The demon god pillar, Babatos, could not resist the evil noble artifact at all. It was destroyed in an instant. Oh, it seems like you're not in a good mood. Floros mocked. After Yaman was killed by Artoria, Floros stopped attacking. It was ready to disappear in the light of the holy sword. However, mocking its nemesis, the dragon of origin, before it died, made Floros very happy. Leah, I'm really messed up. But there's one thing I've always been clear about. I'm not a warrior. I'm destined to be, however, Wu Ming threw the meteor silver that had turned back into a solid sword. The golden ripple engulfed it. Wu Ming was not ready to use the holy sword on Floros. A god that needs to be looked up to by thieves. In an instant, Wu Ming's pupils turned into a noble golden color again. Floros was shocked by Wu Ming's aura that was comparable to its king. It was just like what Wu Ming said. At that moment, Wu Ming was a god. What did a god need to do? Naturally, it was to punish the thieves and make them suffer a fate worse than death. This spell is powerful and eloquent. It's the sword of wisdom that calls for victory. With my skill of the spirit of words, let the justice of the world appear. Wu Ming's magic burst out, forming a tornado-like airwave with Wu Ming as the center. Appear, the golden sword of the spirit of words. As another incarnation chanted, the golden meteor silver slowly rose from the ground. In the end, Wu Ming held it in his hand. Meteor silver. No, it's a sword with a special appearance. Even Artoria had recognized it wrongly at the beginning. It could be seen how powerful Wu Ming was at that moment. That is. Floros, who was shocked, instantly recovered from his daze. Although he did not know what the sword that Wu Ming took out was, no matter how stupid he was, Floros knew that the sword was not simple. What's more, Floros felt an unusual aura from the sword. Your name is Floros. Legend has it that you are one of the 72 demon gods under King Solomon. You are ranked 64th, a duke, and command 36 legions. As Wu Ming chanted, golden meteor silver seeped out from the ground and lined up beside Wu Ming. You! Floros was terrified. He had already felt that the golden swords around Wu Ming seemed to have the power to restrain him. Anyway, now he looked at the golden swords like a mouse seeing a cat. But, according to legend, Floros has another name, Whores. Golden swords, with Wu Ming as the starting point, instantly covered the land with a radius of a few kilometers. Even the golden swords in the sky were not spared. The golden swords were densely packed and seemed to be randomly arranged in the air. Inherent enchantment? Floros recognized this move. Although it looked like it was surrounded by golden swords, at that moment, he, Wu Ming, and Artoria had already arrived in another space. No matter if it is Floros or Whores, there are only differences in the translation during the transmission. The two of them are actually the same person. They are both demon gods from hell. The golden swords in the sky all turned their direction, and the tip of the swords pointed at the demon god pillar, Floros. It is said that Floros has two forms. One is a leopard, and the other is a human. When he is in his human form, his eyes are like flames. The golden swords on the ground also moved. They treated the ground as nothing, and the tip of the golden swords on the ground all pointed at Floros. Bastard! Flawless roared in anger. Countless black fog and heat rays spread out from Flawless's pillar at an extremely fast speed. He felt that if he did not take action to resist, then he would be finished. The sixth sense of a demon god told Floros that the consequences of being stabbed by these golden swords might be more serious than being sent away by the holy sword. He might die. Or maybe, he would rather die. Chapter 804. Wuming did not use this avatar often. After all, if the opponent was not a god, this avatar was basically useless. However, as the avatar soaked in the root and evolved, Wuming used it as his trump card. Wuming's third avatar warrior retained the foundation of the Sword of Spirit Speech. It greatly strengthened the Sword of Spirit Speech to the point where he could activate it even if he did not fully understand the opponent. Of course, he needed to know some information before he could activate it. He could not seal the enemy just because he knew the enemy's name. That would be too crazy. However, it might work in the future. After all, Wuming's 12 avatars had been evolving. I wonder if it would work on Gedia. Last time when he faced Gedia, other than the ability of his main body, his other abilities did not work on Gedia. Wuming guessed that it might be because of the black mud. Forget it. I'll think about it when the time comes. Wuming shook his head silently. After all, it was better to deal with the matter at hand first. Other than not needing to fully understand the enemy's information, this warrior avatar retained the ability to cut the divinity and seal the opponent's ability. He also gained a powerful ability in the aspect of cutting. For example, he could cut Flawless out from the concept of the 72 demon god pillars. Wuming waved his hand and countless Sword of Spirit Speech pierced through Flawless's attack and stabbed into the body of the demon god pillar. Ugh! This is, when the golden sword stabbed into Flawless's body, Flawless could clearly feel that his abilities were disappearing one by one. Even that the divinity that belonged to the demon god was gradually being stripped away. The connection between him and the other demon god pillars and the 72 demon god pillars was also gradually being cut off. Damn it! Root Dragon. As his abilities were sealed, the demon mist released from Flawless's body and the heat rays from the countless eyes disappeared like an illusory smoke. My power. What have you done? Floros found that the power it had lost did not seem to disappear. It was as if it had never existed in the first place. It could no longer feel any of its power. Even the body of the demon god pillar was about to dissipate in Floros' eyes. Of course, Floros' feeling was real. All of Floros' power was sealed in the golden sword. The golden sword was similar to the Prometheus slate, which could steal the enemy's authority. It was a different method but the same effect. However, Wuming's golden sword could only seal the enemy's power into the sword. It could not be used. If he removed the golden sword, the seal would be removed as well. What Wuming wanted to do was to seal the entire concept of Floros, which had already broken away from the 72 demon god pillars, into the golden sword. He wanted it to live a life worse than death and to live forever. No. 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 I am the great devil god, the king's most perfect subordinate. How is this possible? Following Flawless' final words, the demon god pillar disappeared. The golden meteor silver in Wuming's hand was now filled with black runes. That was the entire concept of Flawless. It was all sealed in the golden sword by Wuming. It's over, Wuming said emotionlessly. At that moment, Wuming's heart had also calmed down. Just like what Artoria said, Wuming's heart was in a mess. However, Wuming did not feel that there was anything wrong with it. Firstly, compared to the warrior, he was more like a god. Wuming, who had gradually gotten used to his original form, understood that he had already embarked on the path of becoming a god. In the future, he might be able to kill his enemies with a slap of his claws. Therefore, the warrior had already distanced himself from Wuming. Secondly, the main reason why Wuming liked humans was that other than the possibilities of humans, it was also because of the various emotions of humans. It was precisely because of emotions that humans were so colorful. Wu Ming appreciated this very much and believed that he should not suppress his emotions. This was also the reason why Wu Ming treated Artoria and the others' feelings for him seriously. Rumble, suddenly, the earth began to shake. Earthquake? However, Wu Ming immediately denied this possibility. Because the sky began to shatter bit by bit. This was the sign that the singularity was about to repair itself. Because the last enemy was defeated, the singularity began to repair itself? Artoria said as she looked at the torn earth and shattered sky. Although she looked at Wu Ming. With my spirit base as the price, should be able to hold on for a while. You still have something to say to the people of Chaldea, right? Even if she had lost the Holy Spear, the Lion King was still the Lion King. Currently, she was still the goddess Lungaminiad. Naturally, she could do it. Lia. Wu Ming was touched, but he also felt sad for Artoria's death. This body has ended long ago. I should return to my seat. Don't be sad for me. As she spoke, Artoria walked to Wu Ming's side and wrapped one hand around Wu Ming's neck. She pulled Wu Ming down and kissed him instantly. Wu Ming only had one thought at that moment, as expected of the queen. So bold, after a brief kiss, Artoria ended the kiss. Not only Guinevere, I am also waiting for you to pick me up. Artoria held the holy sword in one hand and wrapped the other around Wu Ming's neck. She looked into Wu Ming's eyes just like that. Wu Ming hugged Artoria back and rested his forehead on hers. Yes, my king. In the West Village, with the support of Gadotsi and the others, the demon god pillars Habas and Nibirius that descended in the West Village were successfully destroyed by Abanti, Gopril, and Azrael. Immediately after, they also felt the changes in the sky and the earth. It should be the singularity repairing itself. Looks like it's in a hurry. Fujimaru, Matthew, Da Vinci, get ready. Roman, prepare the Reiki transfer immediately. Olga Marie's voice came from Gadotsi's bracelet. When they left the desert and came to the West Village, Gadotsi's communication with Chaldea was restored. On the other side of Chaldea, Olga Marie, who just came out of her room, was responsible for answering the call. And Roman naturally retreated to the second-in-command position. Yes, I understand. Roman's weak voice came from Gadotsi's bracelet. So, Senior Villo has taken care of the enemy over there. Matthew was overjoyed. I knew Assassin would not disappoint us. Fufu, who was lying on Matthew's shoulder, also went along with the current situation and called out, Fufu, a few times. Are you guys leaving? Cursed Wrist Hassan, who was resting on the ground, stood up. Chapter 805. Not only Cursed Wrist Hassan, but the other few servants also changed from sitting on the ground to rest, to a standing posture. After all, their friends were about to leave, so they should stand up and express their politeness. And the reason why they called the servants few was that they had no choice. Although they were the most supportive, their opponents were the demon god pillars after all, which was already a calamity for them. Arash and Bayface Hassan had already been sacrificed. Arash chose to self-destruct his noble artifact, instantly injuring the demon god pillar Hapas. 100 Faces Hassan, on the other hand, was engulfed by the demon god pillar Nibirius heat ray in order to save Quiet Hassan. Tang Sanzang and Fujiwara had already been sacrificed before Gadotsi and the others came. However, because of Tang Sanzang and Fujiwara's sacrifice, the villagers here were all fine. They were all covered and retreated to the west. After all, Abanti, Giliel, and Osriel did not value humans very much. Coupled with the frequent attacks of the two demon god pillars, even if it was Wu Ming's order, they could not and did not want to completely protect the villagers. Therefore, other than Gadotsi, Matthew, and Da Vinci who belonged to Chaldea, the remaining servants were Cursed Wrist Hassan, Quiet Hassan, Lancelot, and Guinevere. However, because they were servants, they were not really dead. Therefore, everyone was not too sad. They just lamented that they could not walk to the end together. Fortunately, it's all over. Lancelot, who was standing behind Matthew, used Alandet to support his body. He was covered in blood and gasping for breath. He had suffered a lot of injuries in the desert before. After coming here, in order to protect Guinevere and Matthew, he was indirectly targeted by the demon god pillars. He was seriously injured. Although he did not leave, he was almost done. It was a miracle that Lancelot did not leave. This might be love. Lancelot, are you okay? After all, he was the one who risked his life to save him. Guinevere thought that he had to show some concern even if it was just for show. Your Highness, it's good that you are fine. As long as Guinevere was fine, Lancelot was relieved. I'm fine. Sir Lancelot, you should pay attention to your injuries. After all, from Guinevere's point of view, Lancelot was no longer severely injured. He was as good as dead. Dad, don't move around. You're hurt too badly. Matthew noticed that Lancelot had stood up and immediately pressed him down to sit down. Ugh. Lancelot felt a mouthful of blood rise to his throat, but he swallowed it back down. He was agitated by Matthew calling him, Dad, I'm fine. Ah, my dear daughter, Star. As long as his daughter, Matthew, was fine, Lancelot could die without regrets. Speaking of which, the singularity doesn't seem to be shaking anymore. What Gadotsi meant was that the singularity's self-healing seemed to have stopped. Something must have happened in the villa. Da Vinci looked in the direction of the desert. At this moment, a pillar of light appeared at the location of the great temple complex. What is that? Gadotsi was shocked. Did a new enemy appear? The detection shows that the pillar of light is temporarily supporting the singularity, but don't worry, the detection also shows that the pillar of light won't last long. Olga Mary's voice came from Gadotsi's bracelet. That's my king, Lancelot suddenly said. Huh? The Lion King. Matthew was stunned. Maybe it has something to do with the villa. Guinevere guessed. Lancelot looked at Guinevere, who was unusually happy when talking about the villa, and felt a little strange. But then, Lancelot shook his head. He just needed to watch from afar. After all, he already had such a lovely daughter. Lancelot looked at Matthew with a relieved expression. However, Mashu didn't notice it and ran away quickly. Senior Villo, are you okay? Matthew, along with Gadotsi and Guinevere, quickly went to Wuming, who suddenly used the portal to come here. Gotcha. Wuming seemed to hear the sound of something breaking from Lancelot's side and looked curiously. But other than a heavily injured man who was about to die, nothing else broke. Minister Lancelot, let me treat your injuries first. After all, since he saw Lancelot, it was better to heal him first. After all, he looked pale and heartbroken. It seemed that his injury was very serious and he might be sent back to the Martyr's Palace in the next second. No need, Sir Villo. It's over anyway. Even if you heal me, I will disappear afterward. Lancelot smiled. Although Wuming felt that Lancelot's smile was very forced, however, Lancelot was right. After the singularity repaired itself, everyone would be sent back to Earth. Assassin, is there anything going on over there? What's with that beam of light? Gadotsi pointed at the beam of light curiously. That's the Lion King using his spiritual base to temporarily support the singularity. I have something to tell you, Wuming replied. Wuming came in front of everyone and looked around. The West Village basically didn't look like a village. If it weren't for the wood and wreckage of the houses, it would be impossible to recognize that it used to be a village. And the number of servants was so small. Wuming was quite emotional. It seems that you guys have worked hard too. But that was the right thing to do. After all, cutting down the demon god pillars like cutting melons and vegetables could only happen to people like him and Artoria. Lancelot was seriously injured and was about to die. Although Quiet Hassan seemed to be fine, his breath was also very weak. Matthew and Gadotsi were also in a mess. It seemed that only Guinevere was okay. Yes, there was also Fufu, the little guy, who could still maintain his beautiful fur after the battle. It was worthy of being the fourth beast. As for the others who were missing, there was no doubt that they had all left. Seeing Wu Ming staring at Fo, who was hiding behind her neck and shivering, Ma Shu suddenly realized what was going on and explained. Villo Sr., Fufu disappeared after coming to the West Village with us. I just found it in the village when I came back. To be precise, Fufu ran over by itself. After looking at Fufu a little, Wu Ming no longer cared about it. Wu Ming began to talk about the main topic. Tachika, Matthew, the last singularity you are going to is the Mesopotamia region around 2600 BC, which is the Mesopotamia region in Western Asia. Chapter 806. However, before Gadotsi and Matthew could be surprised, Olga Marie in Chaldea's control room was the first to be surprised. Mesopotamia? Olga? Is your seclusion over? Olga Marie's voice came from Gadotsi's bracelet, attracting Wu Ming's attention. What seclusion? What a strange way to put it, you bastard. Olga Marie said sarcastically. Since you don't know about the last singularity, you must have just come out of seclusion. Chaldea should have detected the location of the last singularity. It seems that Roman hasn't told you yet. Wu Ming's judgment was right. Olga Marie did take over Roman's position as soon as she came out of the room. Then, Olga Marie went crazy. Roman. Why didn't you tell me such an important thing? And from Chaldea's control room, Roman's voice came faintly, Director, you didn't let me speak without permission from the beginning. Then, there was a loud noise, and Roman's voice disappeared. Ignoring what was happening in Chaldea's control room, Wu Ming looked at the world that was faintly shaking and repairing itself, then looked at Gadotsi and Matthew. There's not much time left, I'll make it short, I've been to that singularity. Take this, it should be able to help you. Wu Ming said, taking out a palm-sized white scale that contained magical power. What a beautiful scale, Gadotsi carefully took it. Oh, it's a very rare material. Da Vinci carefully looked at the scale with his glasses. I didn't expect Senior Villo to have been to 2600 BC. Matthew said in disbelief. The enemy of that era is beyond your imagination, be prepared. Wu Ming reminded with a smile, but he didn't say who the enemy was. Gadotsi was about to complain, but Olga Marie's voice came again. Tachika, Matthew, Da Vinci, the ray shift is ready. Right, there's also this. Help me hold it. In the end, Wu Ming took out a holy grail from the golden ripples. Another holy grail? Gadotsi was stunned. However, they had also encountered multiple holy grails at the American singularity, so they were not too surprised. However, Wu Ming shook his head. This isn't the holy grail, it's just a sealed vessel in the style of the holy grail. And the one sealed inside was naturally fluoros. I have sealed the concept of the demon god pillar fluoros into this container. However, it is not easy for me to carry it around, so I hope that it can be handed over to Chaldea for safekeeping. Wu Ming hadn't come into contact with the warrior transformation yet. He turned the golden sword that sealed fluoros into the shape of a holy grail, hoping to hand it over to Chaldea. Chaldea's own magnetic field could block human combustion. Therefore, with the effect of Chaldea's own magnetic field, even if Wu Ming removed the warrior transformation, the seal of the Holy Grail would not be broken. However, Wu Ming's words gave Gadotsi and the others a shock. There's a demon god pillar sealed inside? Gadotsi and Matthew were stunned. According to the detection of the instrument, there is indeed something strange inside, but it is not active. Maybe it's the effect of the seal that Assassin mentioned. Olga Marie was very calm. Then, from Chaldea's control room came Roman's words, this thing is too dangerous, and so on. Then, there was another loud sound, and Roman was silent again. Well, this will be taken care of by the genius Da Vinci. Da Vinci took the Holy Grail from Wu Ming's hand. Wu Ming nodded. Although Da Vinci looked quite unreliable, he was actually a very reliable existence. Then, Wu Ming looked at Gadotsi and Matthew. Remember, you can show that scale when you ask for help. And don't forget, the first Hassan promised to help you. Matthew and Gadotsi's eyes lit up. The fact that Wang Hassan did not help at this singularity made Gadotsi complain. It turned out that he had indirectly left the opportunity to help for the next singularity. Senior Villo, will you help us too? Matthew asked curiously. Of course, I just had some matters to attend to, otherwise, I wouldn't have given you this scale. Wu Ming smiled as if it was a matter of course. Assassin, and everyone, we're leaving. Gadotsi waved her hand and said goodbye to Wu Ming and the others. Senior Villo, see you at the next singularity. Matthew nodded to Wu Ming. I may not go to the next singularity. Don't miss a genius like me. Wu Ming smiled helplessly. Who would miss a guy like you? Whoosh, a light appeared, and the figures of Gadotsi, Matthew, and Da Vinci turned into light spots and disappeared. At the same time, Lancelot, who was immersed in the sadness of his daughter not saying goodbye to him when she left, began to glow. I'm almost at my limit. Lancelot glanced at Guinevere, then looked at Wu Ming and sighed. I'm counting on you, Master Villo. Although he did not quite understand what Lancelot meant by please, he nodded. The moment Wu Ming nodded, Lancelot turned into light and disappeared. I'm about to leave too. But don't get me wrong, Cursed Wrist Hassan did not mean that he was leaving, but that he was going to look for the villagers. No matter what, I have to see them again before I disappear. Cursed Wrist Hassan said goodbye to the remaining few and disappeared like an assassin. Master Villo, it's just you and me left. Guinevere smiled happily. However, Wu Ming looked at Quiet Wrist Hassan, who had no sense of presence, and smiled awkwardly. But before Wu Ming could speak, Guinevere chose to leave. The king should be gone now, so I can't be left behind. I'll go first, Master Villo. Don't forget to pick me up. Guinevere finished speaking, then turned into magic particles and dissipated. Rumble, the whole world began to shake violently. It seemed that as Guinevere said, Artoria had left. Finally, Quiet Wrist Hassan walked to Wu Ming and bowed. Master Villo, thank you. Before Wu Ming could speak, Quiet Wrist Hassan also turned into magic particles and dissipated. Really, why don't you all listen to me? With a sigh, Wu Ming scratched his head helplessly. You won't leave just like that, right? As if responding to Wu Ming's words, two angels descended from the sky, one on the left and one on the right, to Wu Ming's side. Well, of course, Master. Zapril flapped her wings and smiled. As long as you don't give up on us, we will always serve you, Master, Azrael said respectfully. This time, she did not use any fancy words. It's been hard on you all this time. After all, apart from Azrael and Zapril, the other Skywings were basically in a berserk state and had not experienced any otherworld's fun. Master, we sisters won't blame you, meow. Even in a berserk state, we still had a lot of fun, Azrael and Zapril replied to Wu Ming one after another. Then, let's leave together, Zapril, Azrael, and Abanti. Although Abanti did not have much of a presence, he had already landed on the ground, right behind Wu Ming and the other two. Rumble, as the world shook, the whole world began to repair itself, and everything returned to normal. Chapter 807. In a world that resembled a starry cosmos, patches of colorful smoke drifted about randomly, resembling the nebulas of the universe. At the very center of the dense air, on an abnormal platform that was obviously different from the surrounding things, a white dragon that was not huge in size was lying quietly on this platform. It was not breathing at all, just like a statue. But in the next moment, the dragon gasped for breath and opened its ruby-like dragon eyes. You're back. This dragon was the clone that Wu Ming had left behind in the route. And now, Wu Ming had returned from the Middle East singularity. Looks like this body is getting used to life here. Wu Ming looked up and sized up his body. He was very clear about the changes in this body, and it would not be long before this body would become very compatible with the route. Wu Ming then looked at the route that had changed. The scenery around me seems to be changing freely every time. Because every time Wu Ming came to the route, the scenery was different. But there was one thing that was the same, and that was that the starry cosmos would not change. In the last singularity, only Floros and a few demon god pillars came out to cause trouble, and they hid it from Gydia. It's very likely that Gidia has not recovered from the injuries he suffered from the black mud explosion. Although Wu Ming had not recovered, and he could not even find his original body, but it was precisely because of this that Wu Ming had to hurry and find his original body. And then, before Gidia recovers, I'll kill him. It was simple and brutal. After checking the surroundings and outside of the route to make sure there was no black mud, Wu Ming reworked the route's defenses, and finally laid down without worry. I'm overthinking. Last time, Gidia attracted all the black mud between the worlds. If I'm not mistaken, other than some worlds in Gidia's world, there shouldn't be any black mud anywhere else. Gidia was a great help, saving Wu Ming the trouble of cleaning up. Well then, I've returned to the box court world. Closing his eyes, the gigantic dragon body fell into a deep slumber. Box court world, no name, base, Wu Ming's room. At this moment, it was night. Letitia was lying on Wu Ming's bed, sleeping with her eyes closed. Ever since Wu Ming left, Letitia had used magic to lock the room from the inside. Aside from brute force, no one could enter without Letitia's permission. And because of Wu Ming's instructions, Letitia wouldn't let anyone enter. As for Letitia, she complied with Wu Ming's words and stayed in the room. As for why, it was because Wu Ming needed a catalyst to return, and Letitia was precisely this catalyst. Fortunately, as a non-human, Letitia did not really need food. Otherwise, she would have starved to death if the room was sealed. However, it was boring to stay like this, so Letitia simply began to hibernate, whether it was day or night. Vampires could hibernate. Anyway, staying in a daze was waiting, and sleeping was also waiting. Moreover, vampires could increase their strength by going into hibernation. Although the increase was not much, why not? At this moment, the sleeping Letitia's body emitted light. The next second, Letitia instantly woke up and opened her eyes. Is the master coming back? Letitia said. The next second, with Letitia as the center, a complex magic circle appeared in the room. Immediately afterward, Letitia quickly sat up and took out a piece of parchment from her gift card. She injected magic into the parchment, and the parchment burned. A blue magic text appeared out of thin air, but Letitia did not recognize these words. If there was a magician present, he might be able to understand it. Because these were the summoning words of the Holy Grail War summoning ritual. When the complete summoning spell was arranged in the air, the whole magic circle suddenly emitted a light and absorbed the summoning spell into the magic circle. Then, as if it was over, the magic circle that emitted a strong light slowly disappeared. And Letitia felt that she fell into a warm embrace. I'm back, Letitia. Holding Letitia, Wu Ming smiled slightly. As for Letitia, she changed into a more comfortable position and rubbed her head against Wu Ming's chest. Welcome back, Master. The sun gradually rose from the sky, and the first ray of sunlight shone through the window and the curtain into the room. The little fox Lily sat up, rubbed her eyes, and yawned. As the little cook of the community, Lily has been used to getting up early. After putting on her clothes and washing up, Lily walked towards No Name's kitchen. At this time, Lily would have already gotten up to prepare food. However, because of the recent increase in the community's funds, the children of the community could eat well, so Lily did not have to get up early to prepare food for the hungry children. So, Lily also slept a little bit longer. It's all thanks to the blessing of the Villo, Lily's tail wagged as she walked to the kitchen door. Then, she smelled a special fragrance. Sniff, it smells so good. The fragrance is coming from the kitchen and the dining room, but Ren, Black Rabbit, and 16 Knights are not in the community. Who is it? With this thought, Lily pushed open the kitchen door and wanted to find out. In front of the stove, a handsome young man with black hair and red eyes was pouring the cooked dishes into a plate, and a blonde loli was carrying 2 plates. It seemed that they were going to the dining room. However, these 2 people gave Lily a shock. Mr. Villo. Mr. Letitia. Are you back? Lily was excited and quickly walked to the front of the 2 people. Oh, it's Lily, we just came back last night. When we passed by the kitchen, my hands were a little itchy. Don't blame me for taking your job, Wu Ming said gently. You came at the right time, Lily, help carry the plates. Letitia did not treat Lily as an outsider and immediately asked Lily to help. Oh. Okay. Lily was a little surprised by the sudden return of the two people who had been away for a while, but it was because of surprise that she was happy. Helping to carry the plates, Lily looked at Letitia. Mr. Villo, Mr. Letitia, you won't leave again this time, right? Looking at Lily's expectant face, Letitia glanced at Wu-ming, indicating that she would let Wu-ming explain. I'm sorry, Lily, I may leave again. Wu-ming squatted down and looked at Lily apologetically. How could this be? Lily was a little disappointed. But Letitia won't leave. Really? That's great. Even if only Letitia didn't leave, it was enough to make Lily happy. However, Letitia stared at Wu-ming with dead fish eyes to express her dissatisfaction. I didn't leave at all, okay? Pretending not to see Letitia's dead fish eyes, Wu-ming smiled. After carrying the plates, go and wake everyone up. The food won't taste good when it's cold, yes, Mr. Villo. Chapter 808. After having breakfast with the children, Wu-ming, Letitia, and Lily went to the meeting room that was often used to discuss matters. They asked Lily where the others went. Mr. 16 Knights and the others went to the Southern District. Lily told Wu-ming that after Wu-ming left, No Name was invited by the Southern District's Community Alliance, Dragonhorn Griffin Lion, to participate in the upcoming Harvest Festival because of its reliable strength. Because the community had the magic puppets and Lily, there was no need for anyone to stay behind to look after them. Ren, Black Rabbit, 16 Knights, Joyuen Flying Bird, and Kasuga Hibiya all went. How long has it been since they left? After all, he had to figure out how long he had been gone. About 5 or 6 days. To be honest, I didn't expect Mr. Villo and Letitia to come back so soon. Lily's little fox tail wagged. She was quite satisfied that Wu-ming could come back so soon. Wu-ming was stunned. If he remembered correctly, he had stayed in the Middle East Singularity for 5 or 6 days. The flow of time was the same, so it should be different. What was going on? Noticing that Wu-ming had something on his mind, Letitia thought that Wu-ming was worried that 16 Knights and the others would cause trouble in the Southern District. Master, do you want to go over and take a look? Letitia, who was standing behind Wu-ming and had changed into a blue and white maid uniform, asked in a timely manner. Forget it. Let them cause trouble over there. Wu-ming shrugged. He would rather be idle in the Eastern District. Since he was in this world, he should deal with the matters of this world first. Then, Wu-ming asked about Pest. Speaking of which, what happened to Pest? Wu-ming left in a hurry and didn't have time to deal with the matters after the Fire Dragon's birth festival. They had agreed that the defeated Demon King would belong to No Name. Regarding this matter, Mr. Villo, please don't worry. After all, Lord White Yiksha is very fair. Although White Yiksha was not serious in the eyes of Wu-ming and the others, she was actually a very dignified existence in the Eastern District and even the entire Hakata. Since she had agreed to something, she would do it. After all, this was something that had been decided before. Even if Salamandra wanted to go back on their word, White Yiksha wouldn't allow it. Besides, Salamandra couldn't go back on their word. After all, Salamandra won't stand on the opposite side of us just because of a mere 5-digit Demon King. Moreover, No Name has just re-established an alliance with them. However, Lily showed a distressed expression. However, Lord Vero, because the members of the community have all gone to the South District, our Lord Demon King is still with Lord White Yiksha. Wu-ming was Yiksha was White Yiksha was White Yiksha was White Yiksha's? It would definitely take some time for White Yiksha to deal with Pest's matter, and it just so happened that the rest of No Name had gone to South Side. In the absence of the main members, Lily couldn't make the decision on her own. Then, Lily showed a reassuring smile. Since Lord Villo is back, there won't be a problem. After all, Wu-ming was the main member. It was reasonable for him to take the spoils from White Yiksha. Then, Wu-ming sighed and cancelled his original plan. Okay, Letitia and I will go. Eastern District, 2105380 Outer Gate, Thous, and yes, Branch. Inside the Japanese-style shop, White Yiksha knelt on a cushion, leisurely drinking tea and eating snacks. She looked quite relaxed. Suddenly, a black-purple ripple appeared beside White Yiksha out of thin air. Glancing at the black-purple ripple, White Yiksha still calmly drank his tea. Wu Ming and Letitia walked out of the portal. Wu Ming casually found a cushion and sat next to White Yiksha. Letitia, the maid, seemed to be infected by her master. She also found a cushion and knelt next to Wu Ming. Wu Ming picked up White Yiksha's snack and threw it into his mouth. It was as if he treated this place as his own home. Sigh, don't say, this snack is not bad. Right, right? This snack is a precious snack that I, White Yiksha, treasure. White Yiksha nodded subconsciously. Let's have some too, Letitia. Wu Ming picked up another piece of dessert and passed it to Letitia. Hey! You brat! Don't treat this place as your own home. White Yiksha unhappily put the plate with a few remaining snacks into his arms with a, I won't let you eat anymore, look. Looking at you, people who don't know would think that I did something to you. Wu Ming didn't even look at White Yiksha. He maintained his sideways posture and raised his hand holding the snack to feed Letitia. Letitia was a bit resistant. After all, she was Wu Ming's maid. How could she let her master feed his maid? However, she had to give Wu Ming face. Therefore, Letitia ate in small bites. After all, from the beginning, Wu Ming didn't treat Letitia as a maid. Instead, he treated Letitia as a little girl who liked to play maid games. You are quite leisurely and elegant to be intimate with your little maid. Poor Ren and the others are still fighting for the community in the southern district. White Yiksha quickly finished the few snacks on the plate and said viciously to Wu Ming. Letitia's face turned red. However, because of her master's thick skin, her face also became thicker. Don't think that I don't know. You must have known that Letitia and I temporarily left No Name a few days ago. After feeding, Wu Ming patted the snack crumbs on his hand and looked at White Yiksha again. I'm here to take away the spoils of war belonging to our No Name, White Yiksha, MHM. Following Wu Ming's drawn-out MHM, Wu Ming extended his hand at the same time, not at all courteous to White Yiksha. Seeing this, White Yiksha stopped joking with Wu Ming and became serious. Demon King, I've prepared it, but I thought that Ren would take it. You mean Ren's gift, right? Ren Russell had the elf servant. He could perfectly control the spirit race that formed a contract with him, regardless of their spiritual level. But because I'm the only one in No Name at the moment, Lily recommended me. Wu Ming spread his hands helplessly. If he couldn't beat it, he could take it back and give it to Ren. Forget it. In the current situation, even if I give it to Ren, I'm afraid it won't be of much help to No Name. White Yiksha said as he took out his gift card and took out a ring from it. However, Wu Ming was puzzled by White Yiksha's words. What happened? Facing Wu Ming's puzzlement, White Yiksha sighed. Pest's strength was affected and decreased a lot. Chapter 809. Decreased by a lot? Wu Ming subconsciously repeated. Could it be that there was an accident during the resummoning? Although Pest was indeed killed by Wu Ming at that time, due to the rules of the Box Court, the ownership of the defeated Demon King belonged to the community that defeated the Demon King. Therefore, according to the rules of the Box Court, White Yiksha's Thous and EIS could resummon him to the Box Court world. Because he knew this, Wu Ming didn't hesitate to use Yggdrasil to pierce through Pest. This Demon King's strength has decreased to the bottom of the 5 digits and will soon fall to the 6th. White Yiksha said and threw a ring to Wu Ming. Subconsciously catching it, Wu Ming carefully looked at the ring. This ring seemed to be made of sparkling and translucent black jade, and it exuded a profound aura. Could it be because I didn't use Hamel's grimoire as a sacrifice? That's right. White Yiksha nodded. When Pest was the Black Death Spot Demon King, she had the buff of Hamel's town summoned by Hamel's grimoire, and her strength had reached the upper 5 digits. Without this buff, Pest was just an undead girl at the bottom of the 5 digits. And Hamel's grimoire was all shattered when Pest made her final struggle. Without these grimoires, even if Pest was resummoned, her strength wouldn't recover to when she was the Black Death Spot Demon King. Looking at Letitia, Wuming smiled slightly. I have an idea. Wuming did have a way to increase the strength of his possession. That was to use his own spawn and sign a contract with Pest. This way, the powerful strength Wuming brought as the master would affect Pest, who was his spawn. Letitia's strength greatly increased because she signed a contract with Wuming. But even so, Letitia had only recovered to her previous strength, which was around the middle of the 4 digits. If Letitia's lost divinity was found, her strength would probably increase by another level. You mean like Letitia? White Yiksha rubbed her chin. She had heard that Wuming had the ability to turn others into his spawn. But I don't know if Pest is willing. After all, Wuming didn't like to force others. You're wrong, Master. However, Letitia objected to Wuming's idea. The moment Pest was defeated, she no longer had any so-called human rights. The Demon King belonged to the community that defeated her. This was the rule of the box world. No one could ignore this rule, even if White Yiksha, who was in the box's top 10. Pest's human rights have already disappeared. She has failed and is now just an object. I think she should be aware of this as well, so you don't have to worry too much. 3 years ago, when Letitia was taken away as a spoil of war, she also had the same awareness. Be that as it may, I, your master, am not a devil. If No Name was in urgent need of a powerhouse, then Wuming might force Pest to sign a contract. But this choice was impossible from the start. Because with Wuming around, No Name didn't need to be in such a hurry. In addition, who asked Wuming to be kind-hearted, in a way? Letitia still wanted to say something. But Wuming immediately interrupted her. Let's just leave it at that. We'll decide after we ask Pest. Letitia showed a helpless expression. But then, Letitia's helpless expression turned into a smile. Because such strength was also the embodiment of her master's charisma. If that's the case, you should leave. I want to rest. Then, White Yiksha waved his hand in disdain, signaling Wuming and Letitia to leave. He also lay down with his back facing the two and supported his head with one hand. Wuming handed the ring in his hand to Letitia, opened a portal, and signaled Letitia to go back first. Knowing that Wuming had other matters to discuss with White Yiksha, Letitia obediently took the ring and entered the portal. Do you have something else to say? White Yiksha closed his eyes and asked without turning his head. I want to ask about the 2-headed dragon that appeared at the end of the fire dragon's birth ceremony. As soon as he said this, White Yiksha opened his golden eyes that had become extremely serious. I thought you went out to investigate this matter. I didn't expect you to ask me. White Yiksha turned over and sat up straight. Although they hadn't known each other for long, White Yiksha still understood Wuming. Wuming wasn't the kind of person who would investigate thoroughly before asking others. Therefore, since he asked, it meant that Wuming really didn't know. I naturally left for other matters. However, since I'm back, I will naturally pay attention to the matter at hand. The inexplicable appearance of the 2-headed dragon was a very serious problem. If it happened again and appeared in the city, the consequences would be unimaginable. No, if it appeared in the periphery of the East District, it would also be a serious problem. This was because the 2-headed dragon was powerful and had a large number of people. Furthermore, they had a powerful splitting ability. If they appeared in the periphery and charged into the East District, there would be a lot of casualties. This was because no one could stop it, not even White Yiksha. After all, White Yiksha was in a state where most of his power was sealed. Unfortunately, I've asked the community in charge of the seal. The seal is very complete. Therefore, the possibility of the 2-headed dragon splitting from the Demon King has been ruled out. Ever since the fire dragon's birth ceremony ended, White Yiksha hadn't been idle. Or rather, it was impossible for her to be idle. Then, those two-headed dragons should be the remnants of Az Dakaha before he was sealed. The key is, how did those two-headed dragons suddenly appear near the fire dragon's birth ceremony? If they were far away, there was no need to be afraid of actively preparing. What was scary was the fact that they appeared out of thin air. Regarding this, even she, White Yiksha, couldn't find any useful information. Appearing out of thin air, Wu Ming, on the other hand, had some ideas. Because I'm worried that the previous situation will happen again, I specifically asked the community in the East District to increase their vigilance. In the end, White Yiksha sighed. This was because White Yiksha knew that this was only treating the symptoms and not the root cause. After thinking for a while, Wu Ming spoke. Actually, some time ago, I met with some people who wanted to buy Letitia from Perseus. The main point wasn't this sentence, but Wu Ming's next sentence. One of them had the ability to teleport out of thin air that shocked even me. That person was none other than the guy named Maxwell. Chapter 8:10. That was a man who called himself Maxwell. He appeared beside me out of thin air. While I was distracted, he teleported away his companion who was suppressed by me. In the end, I fought him. I estimate that he's a 4-digit existence. 4 digits. White Yiksha nodded. A 4-digit existence was already the peak of the lower levels of the box court. Such an existence couldn't be unknown. However, no matter how hard White Yiksha thought, he couldn't figure out who this Maxwell fellow was. Actually, a group of two-headed dragons appeared out of thin air and attacked me. The moment I killed those two-headed dragons, Maxwell rescued his companion, Wu Ming continued. What? He wasn't surprised by Maxwell's rescue, but by the two-headed dragons. Are you trying to say that the two-headed dragon army at the fire dragon's birth ritual has something to do with that fellow named Maxwell? They had both appeared out of thin air, and the interval between them wasn't long. No one would believe that the fire dragon's birth ritual had nothing to do with Maxwell. A 4-digit existence with the ability to teleport multiple people or objects instantly. It seemed like he had a large number of absolute evil avatars and an organization backing him. If these were looked at separately, they weren't considered dangerous, but if they were gathered together, it was rather dangerous. If that organization did something again, it would cause a serious crisis to the lower levels of the box court, even though it wouldn't exceed what the lower levels of the box court could withstand. This was something White Yiksha, who was a guardian of the box court, didn't wish to see. That Maxwell's companion, do you know their names or abilities? There's an unknown girl who's good at using daggers and has the gift of distance control. There's also a griffin named Glea Griffin, which has a powerful physical ability that far surpasses that of ordinary griffins. Their master is called Your Highness by the girl. Lastly, there's Maxwell. That's all I know. After handing over the information to White Yiksha, he would rely on White Yiksha's abilities to see if he could find any clues about the other party. After all, there was one thing Wu Ming didn't say: the other party knew him. No matter what, his main body definitely had a lot to do with the other party. This was also the main reason why Wu Ming took the initiative to look for White Yiksha. I got it. Next, I'll start searching with the information I have. White Yiksha wasn't confident that he could find the other party. After all, it was too obvious. Whether it was the other party's grace or name, he had never heard of them before. He was either a newcomer to the box or someone who had always been active in the world outside the box. White Yiksha was more inclined to the latter. Then I'll take my leave first. Don't forget to let me know if anything happens. Wu Ming waved his hand and prepared to leave. Lord White Yiksha, something bad has happened. At this moment, a maid named Thousand Eyes suddenly barged in. Seeing that White Yiksha was discussing something with Wu Ming, the maid couldn't help but stop. However, it was obvious that she seemed to have something urgent. Why are you so flustered? Speak slowly. White Yiksha took a sip of tea and motioned for the maid to calm down. Wu Ming, who was about to leave, saw the maid so flustered, but he wasn't in a hurry to leave. He wanted to see if he could help the other party. Not good, Lord White Yiksha. There was an urgent message from the community just now. A large number of magical beasts have appeared around the outer gate of 2105380 and are heading this way. Although the maid had calmed down, there was still a trace of panic. Wu Ming frowned. The outer area of 2105380's outer gate was basically No Name's territory. Furthermore, it was a sudden appearance, and it just so happened that he chose the outer door of 2105380. Was he trying to show off his power to No Name? Wu Ming thought so. It's just magical beasts. Let the community at the periphery resist for a while. I'll go take a look. White Yiksha didn't mind and slowly prepared to finish his tea. Although this matter was very strange, the Eastern District's defense wasn't something that could be broken through by some magical beasts. It couldn't be that Maxwell's doing. How could there be such a coincidence? But, Lord White Yiksha, those magical beasts are estimated to be in the 5 digits and that community is. The maid said carefully while looking at Wu Ming. It should be the news from Letitia who had just returned. Pfft, what? White Yiksha, who heard, in the 5 digits, spat out a mouthful of tea. No wonder the maid was so flustered. Did Letitia simply say that there was an attack by magical beasts? Wu Ming immediately asked the maid. Because the two-headed dragon was the clone of Az Dakaha, one of the oldest demon king humans in the final trial, in order to prevent people from panicking, other than some of the higher-ups of Salamandra, No Name, and this and Yes who knew the inside story, news about the two-headed dragon was blocked. Therefore, even if there were rumors in the outside world, it was only a backup plan brought by the demon king who attacked the fire dragon's birth ceremony. It didn't attract attention or panic. Yes. The maid nodded. As expected of a former box court knight, it looked like Letitia was also trying her best to block the news. After all, it was definitely the clone of a demon king. It was a little too much for the citizens of the box court. Then, Wu Ming and White Yiksha looked at each other. Their eyes were filled with solemnity. Previously, they were still discussing what to do if someone used the two-headed dragon to attack the Eastern District. Now, it was here. It was really, speak of the devil. At the same time, Wu Ming and White Yiksha also felt the tremors of the earth from the two-headed dragon. How many two-headed dragons did it take to cause such a magnitude of earthquake? Without further ado, Wu Ming immediately opened the teleportation door. Let's go, White Yiksha. White Yiksha nodded with a gloomy expression and walked into the teleportation door with Wu Ming, leaving behind the maid who was at a loss. 2105380 Outer Gate, where No Name was located. In the vast wilderness, magic puppets were arranged into several layers. They stood at the outermost periphery as if they were defending against something. Letitia probably ordered the magic puppets to form such a wall, to defend against the two-headed dragons. The children of No Name were nowhere to be seen. Wu Ming used his spiritual power to probe and found that the children were in No Name's house. Letitia was beside the children, comforting them. Not far away, a large group of white figures was rapidly advancing. It was the white two-headed dragons on all fours. There are actually so many clones of human evil. White Yiksha's originally gloomy expression became even gloomier. Moreover, the number this time far exceeded the number of two-headed dragons that appeared during the fire dragon's birth ceremony. Relying on the current White Yiksha, it was impossible for him to eliminate so many two-headed dragons in an instant. If he couldn't completely eliminate them and one of them broke into the outer gate, it would be a catastrophe for 2105380 Outer Gate. If he wanted to get rid of them in one go, White Yiksha might not be able to continue staying at the lower level of the box court. However, the other communities aside, No Name, which was at the outermost periphery, was the first to bear the brunt. Therefore, let me do it this time, White Yiksha. Wu Ming's eyes were filled with anger. Without a doubt, the other party was targeting No Name this time. The other party probably knew that No Name's main force was not in the community, so he dared to do whatever he wanted. However, the other party did not expect that Wu Ming had already returned. Chapter 8:11. Wuming stretched out his hand, his eyes turning golden as he began chanting. I will deny the sky, deny the earth. The storm will destroy everything, and the rain will cover everything. With this supreme divine power, I will make everything in heaven and earth bow and kneel. Instantly, the sky darkened as dark clouds gathered. The cold wind was biting cold. It seemed slow, but it quickly condensed into a tornado that descended from the sky. This is. The sharp-eyed white Yiksha could tell at a glance that the ability Wuming used came from God. Whoosh whoosh whoosh, the storm landed in the middle of the twin-headed dragons. Many twin-headed dragons were swept up and flew into the tornado. In the blink of an eye, they were crushed. They couldn't even scream. The fresh blood produced by the crushed twin-headed dragons turned into new twin-headed dragons, but these new twin-headed dragons were instantly crushed again. Then, new twin-headed dragons were born and crushed again until they couldn't split anymore. However, because he had to be wary of his surroundings, Wuming didn't use much strength in the tornado he controlled. The tornado was small and its suction was weak. It only sucked in the twin-headed dragons in the middle. As expected, I can't let go at all here. White Yiksha naturally understood Wuming's concerns. If she were to do it, she might not be as good as Wuming. Don't you have that inherent barrier? Can't you transfer them all over at once? White Yiksha still remembered that at the end of the fire dragon's birth ceremony, it was Wu who transferred a large group of twin-headed dragons into the inherent barrier. In the end, White Yiksha used Sun's sovereignty to finish off those twin-headed dragons in one go. There's no need to go through so much trouble. As Wuming spoke, his golden eyes were still open as he stretched out his other hand. God says, humans are sinful. God says, humans need to be purified. Thus, I will send the monstrous flood to my body. In the name of the Supreme King, I will bestow the world with equal liberation. After another chant, a stream of water came out of nowhere and floated around the two-headed dragons, forming a thick circular wall of water. The two-headed dragons were at a loss, and they were tightly encircled. It's not over yet. Wuming shouted, and the hand he stretched out behind him instantly clenched into a fist. Instantly, the ring-shaped water flow seemed to shrink, pushing the two-headed dragons towards the center. The two-headed dragons began to attack the water wall in an attempt to rush out, but the moment they came into contact with the water wall, they were sucked in. As if the internal and external pressure were different, the two-headed dragon that was sucked into the water wall was also torn apart, and the two-headed dragon was forced to retreat towards the center. However, the center wasn't a good place either. Unknowingly, the tornado had suddenly become stronger. Together with the circular wall of water, the two-headed dragon that was gradually approaching the center was completely engulfed by the tornado. Wuming placed his palms together, and the circular wall of water attached itself to the tornado. It was as if the tornado had put on a layer of water. Finally, he clasped his hands together. The water merged into the tornado, forming a magnificent waterspout. In the waterspout, the twin-headed dragons were torn apart again and again, and the new twin-headed dragons produced by the blood were the same. It was like a meat grinder. Slowly, the last twin-headed dragon whose blood couldn't split was torn apart, and at that moment, the blue waterspout turned red. In the end, the twin-headed dragon's blood couldn't continue to split into new twin-headed dragons, and the blood dyed the waterspout a bright red color. Thou hast violated the contract and brought evil to the world. Lord's Day, sinners shall be punished. Shatter their backs, dig out their tendons, bones, hair, and brains, and trample on their blood and mud. If I am the one who cannot approach the darkness, I will follow the Lord's words and destroy thee. Another chant was uttered, and a black sphere appeared in Wuming's hand. Wuming gently tossed it, and the black sphere flew towards the waterspout. The waterspout that was still spinning continuously sucked the black sphere formed by the annihilation incarnation into it. The moment the black sphere was sucked in, it began to emit a black light, like a black hole, or rather, a black hole. Suddenly, the entire waterspout was sucked in by the light emitted by the black sphere, as if it had really entered a black hole. In just a few seconds, the blood-colored waterspout disappeared, completely annihilated. Finally, Wu Ming snapped his fingers, and the black sphere floating in the sky was completely shattered with a bang. Bits of black magic power crystals scattered in the sky until they disappeared. The crisis that threatened No Name and even the East Borough was resolved. The entire process took less than 3 minutes. After that, seeing that the crisis was resolved, White Yiksha didn't compliment Wu Ming and quickly left. I'm going to contact the rulers of the other regions and have a good discussion about this incident. It seemed that the threat to the East Borough this time made White Yiksha unable to sit still. She was worried that it would affect the entire box court. Wu Ming, on the other hand, said that he had to return to No Name to check on the children's situation. As expected of Master, you easily destroyed the avatar of absolute evil. Letitia was the first to welcome him. In the face of Letitia's compliment, Wu Ming didn't mind. Are the children all right? From the traces on No Name's land, it could be seen that the children were renovating the land at that time. Perhaps they were preparing for the crops that 16th night and the others brought back. They're fine. Lily and I have been comforting the children. Even though the crisis was resolved, Letitia didn't let the children out. Instead, she continued to stay in the house and rest for a while. They've all grown up and didn't panic. They're sensible and obedient. Letitia revealed a motherly expression. Your motherly expression really shouldn't appear on your lowly face. Wu Ming pulled Letitia's little face, causing Letitia to look at Wu Ming in dissatisfaction. Even if it's Master, if you play with me wantonly, I'll still be angry. However, when Wu Ming stopped pulling and changed to touching her cheek, Letitia still rubbed against him in enjoyment. At the very least, you have to ask for my permission. This made Wu Ming not know whether to laugh or cry. What's with your arrogant tone? And don't forget, Letitia belongs to me. She has no human rights. The phrase, no human rights, was something that Letitia had said to Pest not long ago. In the end, Wu Ming used it to describe Letitia. Master, you're so annoying. Letitia curled her lips expressionlessly. However, in Wu Ming's eyes, it was quite cute. Anyway, she didn't realize it. After playing with Letitia for a while, Wu Ming became serious. Get ready, Letitia. Facing Letitia's doubtful gaze, Wu Ming explained. This attack isn't targeted at No Name, but the entire East District. No Name is just incidental. Wu Ming turned to look at the horizon. I'm safe here, but what if the same thing happens to other districts? Letitia's eyes suddenly shrank. Master, you mean, this is an attack targeting the entire district? Chapter 8:12. Wu Ming didn't care about Letitia's shock. It does seem that way. But Wu Ming's answer made Letitia, who wasn't stupid, realize that there was more to it than meets the eye. Master, you mean, these attacks are only on the surface? Letitia's expression became serious. If the attacks that affected the entire box were only on the surface, then what was hidden underneath the surface, how shocking would it be? At least that's what I think. Then, Wu Ming looked at the magic puppet that was still standing in the distance. I'm going to fix No Name's defense. Letitia, go rest for a while. Later, come with me to find White Yiksha. Uncovering this layer of mystery was important, but the safety of No Name was more important. Yes, Master. Letitia nodded. But then, Letitia was stunned. What about Pest? As she spoke, Letitia took out Pest's summoning ring that Wu Ming gave her. I almost forgot. Lightly touching his chin, Wu Ming thought about how to deal with Pest. Wu Ming and Letitia didn't need Pest's power, but currently, the main members of No Name weren't here, and Wu Ming hadn't been to the southern district, so he couldn't find them in a short period of time. He had to immediately let Pest become a fighting force. How about letting Lily wear this ring? Wu Ming said tentatively as he and Letitia looked at each other. After a while, in No Name's meeting room, a scream suddenly came out. What? The scream, full of girlish energy, made the birds on the roof all fly away. No. No. Lily can't. The little fox girl Lily's face was red. She put her hands in front of her chest and couldn't help but step back. Slowly, Lily was forced into a corner. Then, Lily's body leaned against the wall and slid to the ground. No is no, but... Wu-Ming calmly took a sip of the tea that Letitia made and looked at Lily, who was hiding in the corner. Why do you have to look like you've met a bad person? Letitia, who was standing behind Wu-Ming, helped Wu-Ming complain. After Wu-Ming suggested that Lily use the summoning ring, Lily showed such a state. In short, Lily can't. Lily, who was sitting on the ground, kept shaking her head. Master Villo and Lady Letitia are both here. Why do you want Lily to use the summoning ring? Lily's face was a bit unnatural. It wasn't that she hated the devil, but Lily felt that she would waste of this power. Since Lily doesn't agree, then let's change our method. Letitia was still very soft-hearted towards the children of no name. After all, Lily was still a child. If possible, Letitia really didn't want a child like Ren to stand out. Actually, this is what I'm thinking. Lily has been staying in no name all this time. For now, letting her use Pest's ring is the best solution. Wu-Ming finished the tea in his cup and put it down. But since Lily is unwilling, I'll change my plan. Wu-Ming's words made Lily sigh in relief. Although she felt that she couldn't bear the devil's power and would waste this power, if there was really no other way, Lily was willing to accept and work hard to motivate herself. But since there was another way, it was the best. Master, do you have any other ideas? Letitia felt that her master was omnipotent. I know of a ritual that can use a holy relic to summon the clone of a deceased person called a heroic spirit. Holy relic? Heroic spirit? Heroic spirit? Clone? Letitia and Lily were confused. The box court world didn't seem to have the concept of holy relic and heroic spirit. Simply put, it's using an antique to summon a spirit. By the way, I can be considered as a summoned spirit right now. Is that Lord Villo dead? Lily's face instantly became sad. But Wu-Ming didn't know whether to laugh or cry and shook his head. I'm here to find my body. I'm not dead. Calm down, Lily. Right. Lily's cheeks became red again because of embarrassment. Because Wu-Ming was too much like a normal person, Lily forgot that Wu-Ming was actually a spirit. Behind Wu-Ming, Letitia's cheeks also became red. She also subconsciously ignored her master's identity. In short, if you use the ring that summons Pest as a holy relic, the success rate of summoning Pest is not 100%, but at least 99%. After all, that ring was used to summon Pest. There was no reason for the summoning to fail. Then, Wu-Ming took out the ring to summon Pest. Moreover, Pest summoned as a heroic spirit might be able to increase his strength. And this would solve the problem of Pest's strength. Of course, the specifics would only be known after the summoning. Wu-Ming started drawing a magic circle in the meeting room. The materials used were naturally from No Name's warehouse. Although No Name wasn't particularly rich now, it was still considered to be in the middle class. He melted the gemstones with special magic to obtain the gemstone solution. Then, he added it into the blood of the griffin to draw the magic circle. There were no fancy operations. It was just a simple drawing of the magic circle. Then, Wu-Ming placed the ring used to summon Pest in the palm of his hand and began to chant the summoning oath. Declare. In an instant, Wu-Ming, who was standing in front of the magic circle, poured his magic into the magic circle. The whole room darkened. Letitia and Lily, who were watching from the side, revealed solemn expressions. Thou shalt hear my command. Thy sword is with me. Answer my summons immediately. Just like the magic circle, Wu-Ming's oath to summon Pest was also simple. Instantly, the magic circle and the ring on Wu-Ming's hand lit up at the same time. Then, Wu-Ming increased the amount of magic he poured into the magic circle. Gradually, the magic circle and the ring became brighter and brighter. Lily, who was the weakest in the room, couldn't help but cover her eyes. When the light reached its peak, the whole room seemed to have come to a standstill. Then, as if something had leaked, a sound was heard. Puff, the whole room was filled with smoke. Letitia hurriedly shielded Lily, afraid that she would be hurt. However, the smoke was actually the magic gas from the griffin's blood that had been added with gemstone solution. At this moment, the magic circle that was covered by the smoke stopped shining. The same went for the ring on Wu Ming's hand. Wu Ming waved his hand and the magic gas was instantly blown away, revealing the magic circle and the petite figure standing in it. Wu Ming smiled at this. Success. Chapter 8:13. Standing in the middle of the magic circle that had dried up, Pest slowly opened his dark red eyes that symbolized the Black Death. Avenger, Pest, at your command, my master. Pest looked expressionlessly at Wu Ming, who was standing in front of him, as if he was speaking subconsciously. The reason why it was subconscious was because Pest was obviously stunned when he said those words. The expression on his face was as if he was saying, "What am I talking about?" Sure enough, it worked. The magic circle that summoned Pest was modified by Wu Ming, and it was the same magic circle that Wu Ming used when he returned. Although Wu Ming had no problem using it on himself, Wu Ming was worried that something might go wrong if he used it on Pest. Moreover, because the summoning circle was modified by Wu Ming according to the box court world, Wu Ming and Pest's state were more like heroic spirits than servants. In fact, there was not much difference. After all, Pest was not a living person, but a ghost. And Pest, who was summoned through a special method, was still not a living person, but still a ghost. However, because of the summoning ritual, Pest's various abilities were greatly improved. Your current state is actually 4 digits. Wu Ming was shocked when he felt Pest's aura. 4 digits. Lily, who heard Wu Ming's words, was shocked. After all, 4 digits was already the highest level in the box court world. Because it was an unorthodox summoning ritual in the box court world, Wu Ming as the master could not check Pest's attributes as a master. However, it was still possible for Wu Ming to check the number of people without any concealment through their aura. Master, didn't you say that Pest's strength might increase because of the ceremony? Letitia could also sense Pest's level. She was also a 4-digit number, so she could also sense Pest's level. Although that's true, this increase is too exaggerated. Wu Ming was quite puzzled. From 5 digits to 6 digits, it rose all the way to 4 digits. Although a 4-digit number was at the bottom, Pastor was indeed a 4-digit number. The phoenix tail was much more powerful than the chicken head because this was a qualitative change. I think it might be because of Master that my strength increased so much. Pest looked at Wu Ming with a hint of fear in his eyes. A servant's attributes were affected by their master. The stronger the master, the stronger the servant's attributes would be. Pest was indeed summoned as a servant, but it was not because of the extra power that Pest gained from being a servant, but because Wu Ming had established a master-servant relationship with Pest. Although Wu Ming might not be aware of this, Pest had a very deep impact on him. Originally, Wordless had only given Pest the impression that he was an expert who could defeat him. Now, Wordless gave Pest the impression that he was a god. Pest looked at the scene before him. A dragon was crawling in the universe filled with dense chi. Every breath he took gave Pest immense pressure. Gradually, the dragon's breathing stabilized and his eyelids twitched. Slowly, the dragon's eyes opened a sliver. Just the twitching of its eyelids made Pest feel fear. The opening of its eyes greatly affected Pest's mind. It was as if his brain had been stirred into a mess. Pester suspected that if he waited for the dragon to fully awaken and look at him with its huge dragon eyes, he might lose his mind. Fortunately, the moment the dragon fully opened its eyes, Pest was summoned and stood in the center of the magic formation. The moment Pest was summoned, he learned some information about Wu Ming through the contract he had with Wu Ming. But because of this, Pest was so obedient and looked at Wu Ming with eyes full of fear. However, Wu Ming did not notice Pest's fear of him. He was interested in what Pest said. You know that the master's strength can affect the servant's strength? Is this knowledge from the summoning ritual? The only reason Pest knew that the strength of the master could affect the strength of the servant was because of the Holy Grail's knowledge. However, there was no Holy Grail in this world. How could such knowledge be imparted to Pest? Pest, how do you know this? I learned it from you, master, Pest answered honestly. The moment she formed the contract with Wuming, not only did Pest see the universe Wuming brought to her, but she also learned some knowledge about the Holy Grail War from Wuming. Memory sharing? But this kind of situation will only happen when you're asleep. It was common knowledge that the master would dream of the servant's past. If the servant was asleep, the servant would also dream of the master's past. This was a result of the contract, and it was mutual. When Pest is not summoned, she should be asleep, Letitia suddenly said. But facing Letitia's question, Pest was very reluctant, but in the end, she nodded honestly. After Pest was killed, she was indeed in a state of hibernation. That's not right. I only know the knowledge. It's impossible for me to only know the knowledge in my dreams. There must be something else. Wuming frowned and squinted at Pest. Pest, you should have something else you haven't said, right? In just an instant, Pest's face turned pale. She did not say a word, and even her body stiffened. Wuming's words reminded her of the dragon she saw before. The way Wuming squinted his eyes was very similar to the dragon. Pest was once again sure that Wuming was the mysterious dragon. Master, Pest seems to be frightened by you. Letitia poked Wuming's back. That seems to be the case. Wuming naturally saw Pest's pale face and stiff body. Is it because I look so scary? He could not help but touch his face. No matter how he touched it, it was still a handsome face. How could he scare Pest? Forget it. We'll talk about it when you feel like it. Wuming shrugged. Although he did not know the reason, it was not a bad thing for the current situation. That's it for now. Pest, stay in No Name and get used to your power. But remember, do not attack your companions. I got it. Pest nodded. His stiff body and pale face were no longer as pale as before. Even if she had 10 times the courage, she would not dare to do anything. After all, Wuming's influence on her was too deep. Chapter 8:14. After settling Pest down, Wuming checked No Name's magic puppet. After confirming that there were no mistakes, Wuming left some rune magic on the ground around No Name. Originally, Wuming wanted to set up some magic traps directly, but Wuming would feel bad if unrelated people fell for them. Therefore, Wuming changed it to detection magic. If he sensed any strange people or things, Wuming would immediately use the portal to return. Of course, Wuming felt that there shouldn't be any more enemies in the near future. After all, the enemy's goal wasn't No Name, but something else. However, to be cautious, Wuming still did so. After checking again that there were no mistakes, Wuming opened the portal and returned to No Name's meeting room. Pest returned to her assigned room alone. Before familiarizing herself with her body's strength, she needed to recover her spirit. After all, the giant dragon in her dream had affected her too much. On the other hand, Lily and the other children of No Name began to work again. After all, the children of No Name had all suffered before, and this made them even more restless. However, because of Wuming's instructions, they didn't go outside. Instead, they worked in the room, such as cleaning. Only Letitia was waiting for Wuming in the meeting room. Master, are the preparations complete? Letitia, who was sitting on the sofa and waiting for Wuming, immediately got up when she saw Wuming arrive. Okay, let's go. Letitia, let's go find White Yiksha. Yes, master. 2105380 Outer Gate, inside the Thous and Yes branch. White Yiksha sat there with a distressed look on his face. His arms were crossed in front of his chest as if he was waiting for someone. Black and purple ripples appeared out of thin air, and Wuming walked out with Letitia. You're finally here. Seeing the person he was looking forward to, White Yiksha's restless face relaxed a little. Look at you. Did you get some bad news? It was still the same cushion as before. Wu Ming directly pulled it over and unceremoniously sat in front of White Yiksha. I just received news that the West, North, and South districts were also attacked by Absolute Evil's avatar. What? Letitia, who was sitting beside Wu Ming, was shocked. Her master was right. This is bad news. However, from the looks of it, the two-headed dragon army in the other districts should have been dealt with. Wu Ming wasn't surprised at all. He was rather calm. It's all been dealt with. Otherwise, I wouldn't be sitting here waiting for you. Although White Yiksha was the ruler of the East District, she would take action if there was a disaster that affected the entire Hakata. Of course, it was the same for the other guardians. Then, the situation in the other districts and Eyes and Eyes. Be in the eyes, Letitia said Letitia's in eyes. According to Wu Ming's understanding, the class ruler of the West seemed to be a cadre of Thous and Eyes, but Wu Ming didn't know the details. Noticing the confusion on Wu Ming's face, Letitia explained for Wu Ming. Master, the class ruler of the West that Lady White Yiksha mentioned is called Demon Laplace. He's one of the cadre of Thous and Eyes. Due to his ability, he has been in a deep slumber. White Yiksha spoke as well. Letitia's ability is actually referring to his powerful prophetic ability. Could it be the cadre of Thous and Eyes who predicted that a demon king would attack Fire Dragon's birth ritual? Wu Ming suddenly thought. Being a cadre of Thous and Eyes and having prophetic abilities made it easy for people to associate him with the cadre of Thous and Eyes who had given a 100% accurate prophecy. That's right. The prophecy of Fire Dragon's birth ritual was given by him. However, that fellow is in a deep slumber all year round, so there's no need to pay attention to him. In short, nothing major happened in the West because of his unexpected awakening. White Yiksha didn't plan on explaining Demon Laplace to Wu Ming. However, although he had coincidentally woken up, he wasn't weak to be able to deal with Absolute Evil's clone. That Demon Laplace was at least in the 4 digits. Wu Ming thought so. As for the South District's Absolute Evil clone, it was 16th Knights and Company who helped deal with it. They also gained a wave of no-names reputation. I have to say that they did well. 16th Knights and Company, who were participating in the Dragonhorn Griffin Lions Harvest Festival in the South District, happened to encounter this matter. However, they almost destroyed the Harvest Festival, and they didn't realize it at all. However, White Yiksha looked like he was gloating. As expected of problematic children. Black Rabbit will probably cry for a while. Wu Ming smiled helplessly. After all, they were problematic children. Benevolence and Black Rabbit had it quite hard. The situation in the North District isn't very good. It's different from the West and East Districts, which are basically undamaged. It's also different from the South District, which has few casualties. The North District can be said to be the worst area. The streets and houses are damaged, and there are many casualties. White Yiksha's expression became melancholic. It's because of Shadora and Company. Wu Ming understood very well why. Shadora was one of the rulers of the North District's hierarchy. This meant that there were others who shared the position of ruler. Why was that? Naturally, it was because no one in the community in the North District had the ability to be the sole ruler of the hierarchy. Therefore, there were many rulers of the hierarchy who managed the North District together. Wu Ming did not know much about the rulers of the other classes, but Wu Ming knew about Shadora. Shadora's individual strength was not enough to fight against the two-headed dragon army. As for Salamandra, a community that relied on group battles, they were also unable to fight against the two-headed dragon army that was also good at group battles. Not to mention, Absolute Evil's doppelganger had the strength of a deity, which was only in the 5 digits. It was probably the same for the other communities of rulers of the other classes. Therefore, when the two-headed dragons attacked the North District, they were unable to eliminate all of the two-headed dragons in an instant. As a result, the two-headed dragons rushed into the city and caused destruction, causing casualties. Lord White Yiksha, I remember that there's that existence in the North District, right? Letitia suddenly asked. That existence? Who's that? Wu Ming was puzzled. After all, in terms of being familiar with the world of the box, Wu Ming was a complete novice compared to Letitia. You're talking about that great devil, right? White Yiksha shook a fan that he had taken out of nowhere. Closing the fan instantly, White Yiksha said the other party's name. A great devil born at the boundary between life and death, the leader of the community Willow's Wisp. He's known as the strongest devil in the North District, Vera za Ignifatus. Chapter 8:15. So it's the leader of Willow's Wisp. Wu Ming came to a realization. In the competition called Gift of the Creator at the Fire Dragon's Birth Festival, Kasuga Hikari's opponent in the finals was a ghost named Aisha Ignifast, and her companion, Jack the Pumpkin Monster, who came from the community of Willow's Wisp. If that person took action, the army of Absolute Evil's clones should be easily dealt with. It seemed that Letitia acknowledged the other party's strength. It was Vera who took action. The North District was only slightly slower than the other districts in dealing with the Absolute Evil's clones. If Vera did not take action, White Yiksha would have to go to the North District to provide support. Speaking of which, since this devil is so powerful, why isn't she a class controller? Wu Ming's words were not without reason. Since there was a powerhouse who could deal with the Absolute Evil's clones so cleanly, why was this powerhouse not a class controller? This can be considered Vera's personal reasons, White Yiksha explained vaguely. Personal reasons? Wu Ming was stunned. In short, if you can see her, you'll know. White Yiksha waved his hand embarrassedly. Immediately after, White Yiksha frowned as if he had encountered something puzzling. But now that you've asked, I'm a little concerned about Vera. She should have been in the North District all along. Why didn't she appear in time to deal with the two-headed dragon army? Could it be that she was delayed by something else? Letitia guessed. That shouldn't be the case. Although she has quite a personality, even if there was something else, she should have put down the matter at hand and dealt with the two-headed dragon's invasion crisis. However, Wu Ming thought of something. The reason she was delayed, could it be that she fought with the enemy who transferred the two-headed dragon army? After all, the invasion of the Absolute Evil clones that attacked the entire Hakuto was man-made. Wu Ming and the others did not encounter the enemy, but it did not mean that the people in the other districts did not encounter them. Then, Wu Ming's guess was not without reason. That's possible. White Yiksha's expression was solemn as he nodded. However, because White Yiksha was only collecting information unilaterally and had not seen the person involved, he could not make a judgment. Without further ado, Wu Ming and White Yiksha began to discuss serious matters. I say, White Yiksha, don't you think the attack this time is very strange? Tell me what you think. White Yiksha was naturally a smart person. If Wu Ming could see that there was a problem, so could White Yiksha. Absolute Evil's doppelganger may seem powerful, but every region has the ability to deal with it. I think the other party definitely understands this. So, why are they still doing this? Although the griffin named Glea Grove and the black-cloaked girl were easily taken down by Wu Ming didn't think that the other party was a weakling. The black-cloaked girl had the grace of distance control. It didn't seem like much, but it was actually a very rare grace. As for that griffin, although it didn't have any special abilities, it was possible that it hadn't exposed itself yet. Furthermore, the other party's strength was extraordinary. Although it was easily suppressed by Wu Ming, it was only because Wu Ming had used giant transformation. Apart from 16th Night, Wu Ming couldn't guarantee that anyone could wrestle with the griffin. There was also that fellow named Maxwell. Wu Ming had never understood his ability. On the surface, it looked like a simple teleportation, but Wu Ming's sixth sense told him that it wasn't that simple. Moreover, Maxwell had an inexplicable resurrection ability. Just this alone made Wu Ming unable to do anything to him for the time being. It could also be a doppelganger or an illusion. In short, Maxwell was very difficult to deal with. Finally, the other party's master, the so-called Highness whose background was unknown, and Wu Ming couldn't be sure if there were others. In short, this faction wasn't simple to Wu Ming. I feel that this attack is just a pretense. It's a cover for the other party's next plan. Oh, did you discover anything? White Yiksha opened his fan with a whoosh. No, Wu Ming answered rather calmly. If you didn't, then what are you talking about? White Yiksha was quite angry. She thought that Wu Ming had discovered some clues. Although I didn't discover anything, we can analyze it. Wu Ming smiled slightly. In this double-headed dragon's attack, which district suffered the most serious damage? The North and South districts, Letitia immediately answered, giving Wu Ming face. Although the damage in the South district was mainly caused by 16th Night and the others, that's right. The West and East districts didn't suffer much damage. Therefore, the other party's next plan might be carried out in these two damaged districts. After all, the more chaotic it was, the easier it was to stir up trouble. This was the principle of fishing in troubled waters. White Yiksha gently waved his fan and nodded slightly. It does make sense. Seeing White Yiksha nod, Wu Ming continued. This double-headed dragon and the final double-headed dragon in the fire dragon's birth ceremony in the North District must be done by the same person, or rather, by the same faction. Then, Wu Ming changed the topic. And if you say that pest has nothing to do with the other party, I don't really believe it. Letitia and White Yiksha were stunned and then fell into deep thought. Indeed, if pest had nothing to do with the double-headed dragon that appeared in the end, no one would believe it. If pest is the other party's person, and if we had lost the competition, then as the leader, White Yiksha, wouldn't he have fallen completely into the other party's hands? As soon as Wu Ming said this, both Letitia and White Yiksha felt a chill down their spines. Yes, if they had lost the competition, White Yiksha would have become Pest's possession. And if Pest was the person who created the double-headed dragon, then White Yiksha would have fallen into the other party's hands. Both Letitia and White Yiksha knew White Yiksha's power very well. If he was used by someone, the consequences would be unimaginable. Although there was a reason for his defeat, White Yiksha knew that he was too powerful, so he chose to submit to the Buddhists in the end. He obtained Yiksha's godhood and belittled himself. Under the premise that this hypothesis is true, let's change our focus. Wu Ming once again raised a new point of focus. The other party once wanted to purchase Letitia. Letitia and White Yiksha broke out in cold sweat again. You mean that the other party is collecting powerhouses? White Yiksha frowned. Luce once said that the person who wanted to purchase Letitia from Perseus was someone outside the box court. And when I went to meet those people, I was attacked by the double-headed dragon. Since you can't find any information about the enemy who lured the double-headed dragon here at the fire dragon's birth ceremony, this matches up. White Yiksha was enlightened. I see. Because the other party is someone outside the box court, it makes sense that we can't find any information. Immediately after, White Yiksha thought of some information that he needed to inform Wu Ming. Actually, the hierarchy in the South District has changed. Chapter 8:16. The Southern District's hierarchy has changed? Wu Ming was taken aback. That's right, and it happened not long ago. White Yiksha nodded. Not long ago, the community of the former Southern District's hierarchy, Avalon, was attacked. If it wasn't for the Northern District's Willow's Wisp, who happened to be nearby and intervened through unconventional means, I'm afraid Avalon would have been completely wiped out, White Yiksha explained with a serious expression. Wu Ming felt a little unnatural. After all, Avalon was obviously King Arthur's scabbard, Avalon. Since that was the case, the other party was likely related to the Knights of the Round Table. He didn't know if there was a Villo there answered in this world. It shouldn't be. After all, White Yiksha and the others didn't have any reaction to his name, as if it was the first time they heard it. Unaware of Wu Ming's random thoughts, White Yiksha continued speaking. However, even so, Avalon suffered a devastating blow. The original hierarchy's leader was removed from his position, and the Community Alliance's Dragonhorn Griffin Lion was prepared to take over as the hierarchy's leader. Although he hadn't officially taken over, the other party had already been recognized by the Southern District. Therefore, for now, it didn't matter if it was official or not. At this moment, Letitia raised her hand. Lord White Yiksha, do you know who the enemy that attacked Avalon was? White Yiksha shook his head helplessly. Unfortunately, although Willow's Wisp forcefully intervened, Avalon did indeed lose to the other party. Although there wasn't much of a loss, the price of Avalon's defeat was that we couldn't reveal the other party's information. Therefore, I don't know who the enemy is. In Suitland, the rules of Suitland were absolute. Therefore, Avalon couldn't reveal the specific situation. However, one thing is clear. The other party is the Demon King. As for why, it was because the black contract documents rained down from the sky at that time. Many people saw it, and everyone in Suitland knew what the black contract documents represented. Therefore, he was most certain that the other party was the Demon King. It can be said that if it wasn't for the intervention of Willow's Wisp, the entire community of Avalon would have been wiped out. However, if it was really as Willow speculated, Avalon would very likely become the possession of the Demon King. Immediately after, Bayasha's eyes narrowed. I suspect that the Demon King who attacked Avalon is from the same faction as Pest and the person who can control the two-headed dragon. Wuming crossed his arms and nodded. First, they attacked the southern district. Then, they attacked the fire dragon birth ceremony that was jointly held by the eastern and northern districts. Finally, they attacked the entire box. It seems that the other party is not weak. Although the results showed that the other party had never succeeded, the fact that the other party could continue to cause trouble despite repeated failures was enough to prove that the other party had a deep foundation. Do we need to find Pest for information? Letitia suddenly asked. After all, Pest might know those people. When you see her again, give her a gentle hint. If she really doesn't want to say it, then forget it. I don't really want to treat Pest as an item. Since she joined No Name, she's a family. Wuming did not want to treat Pest as a slave. Wuming believed that the other members of No Name would not want to do that either. I understand, Master. Letitia nodded and did not say anything else. However, her gaze toward Wuming became gentler. If Pest hears your words, I'm afraid Pest will have a better impression of you. Bayasha also turned serious and revealed a frivolous expression again. By the way, Bayasha, how do you know that Pest doesn't have a good impression of me? Wuming frowned. Although Pest was indeed very angry with Wuming based on his behavior before Wuming stabbed him, Bayasha was not present at that time. However, Bayasha's current appearance gave people the feeling that he had a lot of interaction with Pest. Roar. Of course, that's because I used that ring before you came to retrieve it. Pest and I have already talked. Bayasha did not hide anything and told Wuming and Letitia the truth. I see. If it's you, you do need to talk to Pest. Letitia nodded in understanding. No one would believe that the incarnation of the sun and the incarnation of the Black Death did not need to talk to each other. Moreover, Bayasha was in the wrong. After all, it was the sun's laziness that caused the Black Death to break out. Although Bayasha's words were reasonable, Wuming did not believe them. Wuming and Bayasha did not have much interaction. However, Bayasha was the only problem child. Wuming knew this in his heart. In other words, you didn't do anything strange to Pest, did you, Bayasha? Wuming looked at Bayasha suspiciously. Wuming still remembered that when Pest was summoned, he was silent, or rather, very obedient. Moreover, after standing for a while, Pest's face turned pale and his body stiffened. It looked like his spirit had suffered a severe blow. Now that he thought about it, could it be that Bayasha did something to Pest? What are you talking about? Pest and I just had a good conversation in various aspects. Yes, yes. With a calm expression, White Yiksha indicated that there was only a simple exchange between him and Pest. Then why does Pest look like he's in shock? You really didn't do it? Wuming became more and more suspicious. He knew how powerful a problem child like Bayasha was. Even if she really did it, with Bayasha's thick skin, he would probably not admit it. Is that so? Maybe it's not easy to accept the new environment. However, Bayasha's heart had already begun to change. It was rare that forcing someone to change clothes would leave a deep psychological trauma. But Pest clearly scolded him very happily back then, right? However, just as Bayasha was feeling conflicted, Wuming gave up on asking. I'll believe you for now. Then, Wuming made a request. Bayasha, I hope you can go to the South District and help me tell 16th Night and the others not to come back for the time being. Continue to stay there. It was not that Wuming did not trust the South District, but Wuming trusted his own people more. 16th Night and the others were already considered top-notch in the lower levels of the box court. Wuming believed that even if the enemy wanted to do something bad in the South District, there would be no problem with 16th Night and the others around. More importantly, 16th Night and the others happened to be in the South District. Seeing that Wuming had started to talk about serious matters, Bayasha also became serious. Do you want 16th Night and the others to help keep an eye on the South District? No problem, leave it to me. Bayasha turned his head and looked at Wuming. Then, what do you plan to do? Wuming silently looked north. If it's me, I'll go to the North District. Chapter 8:17. The Southern District is guarded by 16th Night and the others, while the Eastern District is guarded by you, so I've decided to check out the situation in the Northern District. Wuming retracted his gaze from the north and looked at White Yiksha again. I should be relieved to leave the Eastern District to you, right, White Yiksha? Wuming teased with a smile. Wuming didn't look down on White Yiksha just because he couldn't do anything against the twin-headed dragon army. The star spirit of the sun, the devil king of the White Knight, White Yiksha's ability was beyond Wuming's imagination. If White Yiksha recovered his two-digit main body, he would definitely be able to capture the absolute evil doppelganger easily. Back then, he could not do anything about the absolute evil doppelganger because the absolute evil doppelganger came menacingly and there were too many of them. White Yiksha had 14 sun sovereigns. Just by using sun sovereigns, he could easily eliminate these absolute evil doppelganger. However, if he really used it, the surroundings would probably be in a mess. Because he had too many concerns, White Yiksha was helpless. Facing Wuming's teasing, White Yiksha was not in a hurry to answer. Instead, he closed his eyes, opened them, and smiled. Who do you think I am? I'm the ruler of the Eastern District. I bet my name as the star spirit of the sun and White Knight. Leave the Eastern District to me. At this moment, White Yiksha's powerful demeanor was revealed. I'll leave no name to you for the time being, Lord White Yiksha. Letitia was also in awe. With that, Wuming, Letitia, and White Yiksha's conversation ended. After learning from White Yiksha which part of the Northern District suffered the most damage, Wuming and Letitia left. Northern District, between the 3999999 and 4 million outer gates. At a bell tower, a black and purple teleportation door appeared out of thin air. Wuming and Letitia walked out. This seems to be the bell tower that 16th Night and Black Rabbit destroyed, Master. Letitia recognized the familiar place at a glance. In the end, it was Wuming who helped to repair it. That's right. It's indeed here. After all, didn't White Yiksha say that, it's not intentional or unintentional, the outer gate that held the fire dragon's birth ceremony suffered the most damage? Therefore, Wuming brought Letitia here. Although we can also go to Salamandra's branch here, after thinking about it, I think it's better to stay here. Although Wuming and Salamandra had some conflicts before, after Shadora and Ren re-established an alliance between Salamandra and No Name, the two sides could be considered to have buried the hatchet. However, White Yikshas and Letitia's and White Yikshas and White Yikshas had a White Yiksha. Moreover, this bell tower was located at a commanding height and was very hidden. As for why such a place was needed, it was because it could easily take in the surrounding situation. As I expected, the damage to the Northern District is much more serious than what White Yiksha said. They walked to the window of the bell tower and looked around. White Yiksha might have said that the Northern District was only slightly slower than the other districts in dealing with Absolute Evil's doppelganger, but sometimes, being slightly slower would delay things, such as the current Northern District. Because the bell tower's geographical location was closer to the center, and because there was no human habitation, it did not suffer fatal damage from Absolute Evil's doppelganger's attack. It only suffered some damage at the base. Moreover, the other outer gates were not so lucky. Wu Ming looked around. 7 or 8 of the 10 buildings were completely destroyed. The remaining 2 or 3 were so damaged that they were uninhabitable. Not only that, but Wu Ming also saw many bloodstains on the streets. These should be the residents' blood. After all, the blood of the two-headed dragon could split again, and it could be the blood of the two-headed dragon that could not split again. However, compared to this, Wu Ming felt that the two-headed dragon had been killed by people using special methods. He could not see any civilians. They might have been transferred to other outer gates to take refuge. Perhaps it was because the battle had just ended, but the people walking on the streets were basically all fully armed members of the Northern District community. This was because everyone had their own community's coat of arms. Wu Ming even saw people from Salamandra. Some of them were patrolling to see if there were any other survivors, while others were specifically searching for any two-headed dragons that had been left behind. The possibility of the former was not small. After all, the collapse of the building had knocked out the people who were still alive under it, or the people hiding in the building did not have time to come out because of the collapse. The latter was unlikely. After all, although the two-headed dragons were said to be at the deity level, their strength was only at the deity level. Their intelligence was equivalent to that of an ordinary beast, or even lower. Generally speaking, unless they were all dead, they would not stop. However, there were exceptions. For example, when the two-headed dragon was eliminated, a two-headed dragon had accidentally been buried in the ruins of a building and had just crawled out. Interestingly, Wu Ming, who was standing at a commanding height, happened to see such a scene. A white two-headed dragon struggled to crawl out of the thick ruins and was ready to attack the patrolling personnel who had just walked away. The patrolling personnel seemed to have heard a trace of a sound and immediately shouted, thinking that there were survivors. "Hey! Are there any survivors? If there are, please answer me." He was also one of the people who thought that it was unlikely for the two-headed dragon to survive. The man shouted as he explored the surrounding ruins. However, he did not know that the survivors he thought were actually the avatars of absolute evil that could take his life. Roar! The two-headed dragon roared and suddenly rushed toward the person who did not discover it. Wah! The person who heard the sound subconsciously turned his head, only to see the two-headed dragon pouncing towards him with its 2 bloody mouths wide open. He had no time to react. "Hey!" Suddenly, a girl's voice came from one side, and the two-headed dragon suddenly flew to the other side. Then, a girl with blue and white pigtails appeared in front of the patrolling personnel, half squatting on the ground. This person was a member of Willow's Wisp, Aisha Ignifost. "Thank you so much, Master Aisha." He had clearly seen what had happened just now. Aisha had kicked the two-headed dragon away. Otherwise, he might have died in the dragon's mouth. "Haha," Aisha said with a trembling voice. "You're not injured, right? The battle just ended not long ago, so it's inevitable that there will be remnants. You can't let your guard down." Aisha stood up and criticized the person. Yes. Master Aisha is right. I've learned my lesson." The person who was almost attacked was ashamed. He was indeed careless. If Aisha did not save the situation, he would have instantly died in the two-headed dragon's mouth. If he had been cautious from the beginning and noticed the existence of the two-headed dragon, he would have known that it was only a doppelganger of absolute evil. Even if he couldn't defeat it, he could have fought it for a few seconds and shouted for the surrounding people to come to his aid. In short, he would not be killed in an instant. But fortunately, Aisha was attracted by his shout, thinking that there was a survivor. In short, the result was good. Aisha, the enemy hasn't been defeated yet. You can't be careless. At this time, a big pumpkin head holding a lantern appeared from the side and lectured Aisha in a strange tone. This big pumpkin was Aisha's companion, the pumpkin monster with a lantern, Jack. Of course I know. Aisha's pale face was slightly red, which was particularly eye-catching. At this time, the two-headed dragon that was kicked down had already turned over and was ready to attack again. It's just a 5-digit beast. Watch me take care of it in minutes. Aisha pouted and a blue flame appeared in her hand. Whoosh! But at this time, a white spear instantly pierced through the two-headed dragon's head and nailed it to the ground. Chapter 8:18. Who is it? Aisha immediately became alert and looked in the direction where the spear came from. That was the location of the clock tower. However, the other party appeared from behind Aisha. Long time no see, Aisha, Jack. A dark purple portal appeared behind Jack, and Wuming and Letitia walked out. Oh, so it's Lord Villo and Lord Letitia. Long time no see. Jack immediately greeted Wuming. As a maid, Letitia was befitting of her identity. She slightly bent her back and nodded. Lord Villo and Lord Letitia, why are you in the Northern District? When Aisha saw that it was Wuming and Letitia, she stopped throwing tantrums. Letitia was a senior in the box court, so Aisha naturally knew about her. The news of Wuming defeating the Demon King with a holy spear at the end of the fire dragon's birth ceremony also spread like wildfire. Although Wuming and Letitia were in the no-name community, Aisha would not look down on them because of this. The strong would be respected no matter where they went. So it's Lord Villo and Lord Letitia who defeated the Demon King. The person who was saved by Aisha also recognized Wuming and Letitia. After all, the fire dragon's birth ceremony had just ended. Taking advantage of the popularity, Wuming was quite famous in the Northern District. Hurry up and go. Remember to be careful in the future. Not everyone will come to save you at all times. Seeing that Wuming and Letitia had arrived, Aisha hurriedly prepared to send away the person she saved. Yes, Lord Aisha. I won't disturb your conversation with Lord Jack and the other two. The person quickly got up, bowed to Aisha and Wuming, and then quickly left. He still had to continue patrolling and see if there were any survivors. I didn't know that you were quite famous. Wuming could see that the person who was saved respected Aisha from the bottom of his heart, and not just because she saved his life. From this, it could be seen that Aisha was quite famous in the Northern District. After all, she was not weak. As the saying went, the strong would be respected wherever they went. During the Gift of the Creator finals, if it weren't for the fact that his relationship with Wuming had improved, and he had obtained Wuming's flame through becoming friends, he would have probably lost to Aisha. Of course, I'm very famous in the Northern District. However, as soon as Aisha Wuming praised her, she immediately raised her head proudly, her nose almost reaching the sky. By the way, you still haven't told me why you came to the Northern District. Aisha turned her head and thought for a moment. Naturally, it is because of these doppelgangers of absolute evil, Wuming said, extending his right hand. Yggdrasil, the holy spear that had pierced through the two-headed dragon's head and nailed to the ground, was pulled out of thin air and automatically flew into Wuming's hand. This should be the legendary holy spear that destroyed the Demon King with a single blow. It is indeed extraordinary. Although Jack was a creation created by the leader of the Willow's Wisp, he looked more like a powerful spirit that had lived for a long time. Jack could see the details of this pure white spear at a glance. The power it contained, coupled with the fact that it was held by Wuming, proved that this was the holy spear that had pierced through the Demon King. If you're referring to the spear that pierced through Pest, it is indeed this one. Wuming nodded calmly. Then, Wuming casually swung the holy spear, and golden ripples appeared at the tip of the spear, swallowing the holy spear. By the way, Lord Villo already knows that there are doppelgangers of absolute evil here. News travels so fast here. Aisha was stunned. It seemed that she still did not know that the 4 districts had been invaded by doppelgangers of absolute evil. It is not only our Northern District that has doppelgangers of absolute evil. Doppelgangers of absolute evil have also appeared in the eastern, southern, and western districts, Isha. It seemed that Jack was in the know. Is it that serious? Isha was shocked. Regardless of how many doppelgangers of absolute evil were in the other districts, this had at least affected the entire district. Anyway, I'm here to investigate in the northern district. Wu Ming pointed at the two-headed dragon that had already turned into a dried corpse not far away. I didn't expect to encounter this as soon as I arrived, and even meet you guys. However, Isha looked in the direction Wu Ming pointed at and was shocked by the dried corpse of the two-headed dragon. This. How did it dry up? Jack, on the other hand, saw some clues. It was roasted dry, right? Jack said as his gloved hand stroked the chin of his pumpkin head. Wu Ming nodded and began to explain. That's right. My holy spear is filled with the power of light. The moment it pierced its body, the powerful power of light roasted its blood dry. After all, no one knew if the two-headed dragon's blood would split again. Therefore, to be on the safe side, Wu Ming directly used the power of the holy spear to roast the two-headed dragon's blood dry. Then, Wu Ming waved his hand at the two-headed dragon's corpse. As a gust of wind blew past, the two-headed dragon's corpse shattered and disappeared. Isha swallowed her saliva. Even though she was a spirit, she was still a little frightened by this scene. Of course, it was not that she was afraid of Wu Ming. She was just afraid of Wu Ming's spear. As expected, that spear is an extremely powerful god's persona weapon. Isha estimated that if she was stabbed in her spirit body, she might be instantly roasted dry. You can say that. Wu Ming shrugged. A relic and a godhead weapon could be considered the same thing. Oh right, can you guys explain to me how the Northern District deals with these doppelgangers of absolute evil? After all, he was here to investigate. Naturally, he had to ask the locals. Of course. Let's have Aisha explain it, Jack replied and nudged Aisha. Why do I have to explain when Jack agreed? Isha looked resentful. It was not that she was unwilling to explain, but she was a little upset that Jack had tricked her again. Roar, roar, roar. There's nothing we can do about it, Isha, because I'm just a pumpkin. Roar, roar, roar. Jack let out a strange laugh. I know, let me explain. Isha tidied up her clothes and patted the dust off her skirt symbolically. Then, she began to explain. It was not complicated. The two-headed dragon army that appeared in the northern district suddenly appeared. Nobody knew how they appeared. The location was between the outer gate of 399999 and 40000000. It was the place where the fire dragon's birth ceremony was held some time ago. As the doppelgangers of absolute evil had appeared there before, the surrounding communities had strengthened the defense facilities there. Therefore, when the two-headed dragons invaded, the area between the outer gate of 399999 and 4 million became the best battlefield to fight against the two-headed dragons. At the same time, the two-headed dragon army that was not eliminated in time did not spread out. Instead, they held on until the great devil of the northern district arrived and eliminated the doppelgangers of absolute evil in one fell swoop. So that's how it is. Letitia had an "so that's how it is" look on her face. Indeed, the doppelgangers of absolute evil that were delayed for a short period of time did not spread out. Instead, they were all wiped out in one fell swoop. This was a problem in itself, but this problem was finally solved. However, why would the enemy release the doppelgangers of absolute evil here? Chapter 8:19. Sighing helplessly, Wu Ming could be considered to have accepted it. Sure enough, the courtyard is a magical place. Then, Wu Ming closed his eyes and began to search. After Wu Ming closed his eyes, Letitia revealed a happy smile. Seeing Wu Ming's helpless expression, Letitia was actually quite happy. However, Wu Ming did not know what Letitia was thinking at the moment. He was now fully releasing his spiritual force, preparing to instantly scan the entire outer door. In the courtyard, Wu Ming's spiritual force was basically in a closed state. Even if it was opened, it could only cover a few meters around him. After all, there were many strange people in the courtyard, and there were also many strong people. If he wantonly used his spiritual force to scan, it would easily cause unnecessary misunderstandings. Then, why did Wu Ming want to wantonly use his spiritual force now? It was not because of the so-called crucial moment, but because Wu Ming was preparing to do a detailed operation. Searching without touching anyone. It sounded ridiculous, but it could be done. Or rather, Wu Ming could do it. Wu Ming's spiritual force was extremely powerful. Without touching the human body, Wu Ming could also see that person just by using his spiritual force. However, to search such a large area and find one person among so many people, it was indeed quite difficult, not to mention that the person might not even be here. However, it was still better than shamelessly looking for Salamandra, right? Moreover, what if he found it? For example, now, Wu Ming, who had completely released his spiritual force, saw a transparent world. Every person, every house, every pile of ruins, and even the bloodstains on the ground appeared in Wu Ming's mind. Other than the lack of color, it was a complete God's perspective. And according to Letitia's portrait of Vera, Wu Ming really did find it. In a corner, a young girl with big twin ponytails and prominent breasts looked around, as if confirming that no one had noticed her. Opening his eyes, Wu Ming smiled. As expected, fate is on my side. Could it be that you found Master Vera? Letitia couldn't help but be surprised. To be honest, Letitia did not expect Wu Ming to find Vera here. After all, many people had seen him leave in a hurry. Since that was the case, Vera naturally wouldn't continue to stay here. No, Letitia noticed the problem. The most dangerous place was the safest place. Perhaps the people chasing Vera didn't expect her to choose to stay after dealing with the two-headed dragon. His own cleverness had backfired on him, not good. Wu Ming suddenly shouted. What's wrong, Master? Did Master Vera discover you? Letitia guessed. That's right. Wu Ming nodded and snapped his fingers. A dark purple ripple appeared. Quick, Vera wants to escape. Wu Ming said as he pulled Letitia into the portal. In Wu Ming's vision, Vera, who was carefully looking around, suddenly looked in Wu Ming's direction. Obviously, she realized that someone had discovered her. Then, Vera turned into a ball of will-o'-the-wisp and quickly moved in a certain direction. As soon as the will-o'-the-wisp left, the dark purple ripple appeared where Vera originally was. Wu Ming and Letitia jumped out of the ripple and looked around. Looks like Master Vera has escaped. Letitia could still feel the residual energy in the air. Indeed, but in this place that has become my backyard, Vera can't escape. Wu Ming raised his hand and snapped his fingers again. The portal appeared again. Wu Ming's spirit scan was still active. How could he let Vera escape? Wu Ming walked into the portal with a confident smile. Let's go, Letitia, we'll intercept them. As you wish, Master. On the other side, a ball of will-o'-the-wisp escaped into an alley. Dispelling the will-o'-the-wisp, Vera revealed her true form. She looked behind her and made sure that no one was following her. After a short moment of thought, Vera decided to leave. But it was this short moment of thought that caused Vera to lose the chance to leave. Where do you think you're going, Will-o'-the-Wisp's leader, Vera za Ignifost? The dark purple ripple appeared behind Vera, and a rather calm voice was heard. Vera jumped and pulled away, revealing a vigilant look. A man and a woman walked out of the dark purple ripple. They were Wu Ming and Letitia, who were looking for Vera. By the way, Master, your words can easily be misunderstood. Letitia complained to Wu Ming helplessly. Wu Ming was stunned for a moment before he reacted. Indeed, his current actions and the words he said just now clearly didn't seem like a good person. I'm sorry, Will-o'-the-Wisp's leader, I apologize for my rudeness. Wu Ming apologized. Vera did not run away again, perhaps because Wu Ming's apology worked. However, Vera seemed to be relieved. Wu-ming also took the opportunity to observe Vera again. Unlike Letitia's black and white painting, the real person was much prettier than Letitia's. She had sharp ears like a fairy's, white hair that was tied into two thick ponytails, and even her eyelashes were white. She wore a black skirt with blue laces and a low neckline that exposed her shoulders. The extremely low neckline accentuated Vera's extraordinary breasts, which was extremely eye-catching. More importantly, her face was extremely cute, with a hint of charm in her innocence. And if Wu-ming was not mistaken, she seemed to be a little naive. Although Vera was indeed beautiful, Wu-ming only looked at Vera for a few seconds before starting a formal conversation. "I'm Vera Silence Eddie of no name. This is my relative, Letitia de Crea. I've been entrusted by White Yiksha to investigate the matter of Absolute Evil's doppelganger. So, can you please stop running?" Wu-ming naturally did not come to the North District because of White Yiksha's request. However, there had to be a reason for everything, and White Yiksha was the best reason. Even if it was an investigation, Wu-ming believed that White Yiksha would not expose Wu-ming. Therefore, Wu-ming calmly used White Yiksha as a reason. Vera did not speak, but her little head nodded slightly, indicating that she would not run anymore. In fact, when Vera saw who it was, she did not want to run anymore. As long as it was not that guy, everything was fine. Then I'll get straight to the point. Before Absolute Evil's clone caused trouble, did you encounter an enemy? Vera raised her head and poked her chin with one hand. She thought for a moment and silently shook her head, which was very cute. But after shaking her head, Vera immediately nodded again. This made Wu-ming and Letitia confused. In the end, under Wu-ming and Letitia's puzzled gaze, Vera walked up to Wu-ming and pulled up Wu-ming's sleeve. "Help me." Chapter 820. Unlike the traditional demons, as a demon, Vera's voice was exceptionally light, just like an elf's. It was not an exaggeration to say that listening to Vera's voice was a pleasure. Moreover, Vera's "help me," coupled with her current expression, could be said to be lovely and moving. Not only Wu-ming, but even Letitia's heart had some ripples. "First, tell me what's going on, Vera." Wu-ming paused for a moment before continuing. "Can I call you that?" Vera was actually very casual when it came to addressing her, so Vera nodded, indicating that she agreed. After Vera nodded, Wu-ming immediately asked. "Then, Vera, what difficulties have you encountered?" Wu-ming half squatted down. At this moment, the Vera in front of Wu-ming didn't seem like the leader of the Willow's Wisp, but more like a little sister asking for help. "There's a pervert following me." Pulling on Wu-ming's sleeve, Vera's eyebrows twitched slightly, her body shrunk, and her eyes looked around as if she was afraid that the pervert would suddenly jump out. "Pervert?" Wu-ming and Letitia couldn't help but be stunned. The first thought that appeared in their minds was that it was inconceivable. Who would dare to follow Vera? After all, Vera wasn't an ordinary person. She was the leader of the Willow's Wisp community in the Northern District, the strongest in the Northern District, a great demon born between life and death, and could easily deal with Absolute Evil's army of doppelgangers. There was actually someone who dared to follow such a strong person. But then again, if the other party dared to be the pervert tailing, he might not be weak. Otherwise, why would this pervert make Vera show such a disgusted and helpless expression? "Vera, can you tell me about this pervert? For example, his name." No matter what, he still needed to know about this pervert. Wu-ming wanted to see just which arrogant fellow actually tailed the strongest in the Northern District. Vera nodded, her tone still light as she said the other party's name. "His name is Maxwell." "Maxwell?" Wu-ming subconsciously repeated. Why did Maxwell come to the Northern District? And he even became a pervert who tailed them? But on second thought, Wu-ming felt relieved. The twin-headed dragons were closely related to Maxwell. Since an army of twin-headed dragons had appeared in the Northern District, it made sense for Maxwell to be here. However, sizing up Vera, Wu-ming could not help but guess, Could it be that he was a Lulicon? No, no, no. How could that be? In any case, the other party was someone who was rather calm in front of him. How could he be a pervert? Perhaps the other party was tailing Vera in order to prevent him from providing support. Only then would it be logical. Master, do you know that guy called Maxwell? Letitia couldn't help but look at Wu Ming. After all, Wu Ming's expression was too obvious. Perhaps Wu Ming knew Maxwell, or perhaps he knew this person. I do know Maxwell. Wu Ming frowned slightly, recalling the unpleasant meeting with Maxwell. Letitia, do you remember that I once pretended to be someone from the Perseus to meet the person who wanted to buy you? I remember, Master. Letitia nodded. But what happened in the end, you didn't tell me, nor did you tell the others from, and no name. The person I met wasn't an ordinary buyer. If I'm not mistaken, the absolute evil doppelganger incident that affected the entire suitcase was done by them. It's indeed shocking, Letitia said calmly. Vera, on the other hand, was startled. Letitia's calmness was also within Wu Ming's expectations. After all, the last time he went to talk to White Yiksha, Letitia was by his side. Letitia did have some guesses because of Wu Ming and White Yiksha's words, and Wu Ming's words just now confirmed Letitia's suspicions. The other party once wanted to buy Letitia. This was what Wu Ming had said at the time. And Letitia had deduced from this sentence. At that time, I captured 2 of Maxwell's companions. In the end, some absolute evil doppelganger inexplicably appeared and attacked me. Maxwell took the opportunity to save his companions. Wu Ming would get back at the other party for the loss he suffered at the other party's hands sooner or later. If it's Maxwell, I think I understand why Vera is so distressed. That was because Maxwell had an inexplicable resurrection ability, at least on the surface. Vera, did you kill Maxwell several times, but in the end, he appeared in front of you unscathed? As soon as Wu Ming said this, Vera immediately nodded desperately as if she had met a confidant. Wu Ming thought to himself that it was indeed the case. At that time, Wu Ming did indeed kill Maxwell, and did not show any mercy. Logically speaking, that sense of reality would not lie, but for the sake of caution, Wu Ming had never been able to completely confirm Maxwell's resurrection. And after Vera's confirmation, Wu Ming could also be considered to have confirmed that Maxwell did indeed have an inexplicable resurrection ability. Master, you mean that Maxwell can be resurrected? Letitia was shocked. No matter when or which world it was, resurrection was always a shocking matter. Not to mention Maxwell's unlimited resurrection ability. But, Master, will there really be the gift of unlimited resurrection? What Letitia meant was whether or not the other party had used some other method or gift to master the ability that looked like resurrection in the eyes of outsiders. At the very least, from our point of view, Maxwell has indeed been resurrected. As if responding to Wu Ming's words, Vera's little head nodded fiercely. Since the 2 powerhouses, Wu Ming and Vera, had said so, Letitia, who had never seen Maxwell's resurrection, had to obey the majority. If that's the case, then this Maxwell will be difficult to deal with. Letitia crossed her arms in distress. Just the uncontrollable resurrection ability alone was enough. Vera had no choice but to hide from Maxwell. Indeed, in addition to the resurrection ability, Maxwell is also a 4-digit demon king, and he has the ability to teleport multiple units. These 2-headed dragons were probably transported by him. The teleportation ability could be used to attack and defend, save teammates, escape, and transport the 2-headed dragon army. The opponent was a 4-digit demon king, and he also had a troublesome resurrection ability. It was a powerful enemy. Of course, if Wu Ming could find the main body, Wu Ming could keep Maxwell in a constant state of resurrection. With that in mind, Wu Ming's thoughts drifted back to his main body. He wondered how the main body's injuries were recovering. The feeling of being blasted by the black mud was not pleasant. Back then, after Wu Ming transferred his mind to the backup machine of the root, Wu Ming still suffered from mental damage, and it was not light. As for how the main body was injured, Wu Ming, who had completely cut off the connection, did not know. He had to hurry. With that in mind, Wuming looked at Vera again. Maxwell's group seemed to know the whereabouts of Wuming's main body, and it just so happened that Maxwell bumped into the muzzle of the gun. If Wuming did not shoot, it would be a waste of Maxwell's rare action. Then, Wuming, who was looking at Vera, spoke. Vera, can you tell us more about Maxwell? Chapter 8:21. With Vera's approval, Wuming and Letitia left with Vera. Wuming opened the portal and the three of them returned to No Name's base. In the conference room of No Name, Wuming and Vera sat together on the sofa. This was because Vera did not let go of Wuming's sleeve after pulling it up. Vera did not care about Wuming's distress. She seemed to be very curious about Wuming's portal as she looked at the location where the portal had disappeared. Is there something you care about, Vera? Wuming looked at the place where Vera was looking but did not find anything special. Vera did not say anything. She only reached out her hand and pointed at the place where the portal had disappeared. Master Vera should be interested in your teleportation portal, Master. Letitia poured tea for Vera as she answered Wuming. Master Vera can freely control the realm gate. To a certain extent, Master Vera has the same ability as you. Thank you, Vera thanked Letitia in an adorable tone, but she didn't have the slightest self-awareness. She hugged the teacup with both hands. You're welcome, Master Vera. Letitia was very pleased and nodded with a smile. Then, Letitia came to Wuming's side and poured tea for Wuming. Wuming's eyes lit up because of Letitia's words. Vera could freely control the realm gate, and this ability was indeed very similar to Wuming's portal. However, the realm gate was fixed, while Wuming's ability was not. Moreover, Wuming's portal could only be used to go to places. However, both had their advantages. Then we are really fated. Wuming smiled. Vera still did not speak, only her little head nodded fiercely. At this time, Letitia, who was standing behind Wuming, spoke. Sir Vera, please tell us more about Maxwell. After all, Wuming and Letitia brought Vera back to No Name to obtain information about Maxwell. Therefore, Vera began a very short explanation. Because Vera did not speak much, Wuming and Letitia could only speculate further from Vera's words. However, because Vera tried her best to avoid Maxwell, Vera did not know much about Maxwell. Most of the information she said was the same as what Wuming knew. Combined with the information previously known, it could be summarized into the following points. Maxwell was a newly promoted demon king who came from the outside. He had control over ice and fire, multiple units of teleportation, as well as the strange ability to resurrect. He was also connected with Absolute Evil's doppelganger. Apart from this, Wuming also knew one more thing. Maxwell didn't just start tailing Vera. Instead, he started tailing her before she even arrived at the box court. According to Vera, it was because she could not stand Maxwell's tailing that Vera came to the box. Wuming, who knew the truth, had a complicated feeling. Because, from this, it could be seen that Maxwell was really a pervert, but Wuming looked at Vera's extremely unscientific body and her naturally beautiful face. Vera noticed Wuming's gaze and responded to Wuming with her head tilted in confusion. Wuming seemed to understand Maxwell's perverted behavior. Huff. Wuming sighed and lay down on the sofa behind him. Even if they managed to gather information on Maxwell, he would still be a huge problem. And this big problem was his strange resurrection ability. Although he could choose to trap Maxwell, don't forget that Maxwell also had the ability to teleport. Moreover, he did not know if he still had other abilities because Vera just said that she tried her best to avoid Maxwell. It was not easy for a natural airhead like Vera to know a lot of information about someone she hated the most and tried her best to avoid. Oh right, Wuming also knew the main reason why Vera was not the ruler of the hierarchy. It was because of Vera's natural airhead attribute. Speaking of which, Vera, where did you meet Maxwell? Since he could not think of a way to deal with Maxwell, he had to change the entry point 54545 outer gate. Vera answered truthfully, 54545 Outer Gate. Wu Ming was stunned. If I remember correctly. Wu Ming said and looked at Letitia. That's right, Master. Outer Gate 54545 is where Salamandra's headquarters is located. Letitia confirmed. Vera, other than Maxwell, did you meet anyone else? For example, Maxwell's companions or something? Vera tapped her cheeks, thought for a moment, and finally shook her head. That guy's vigilance is quite high. Wu Ming frowned. But thinking about it carefully, for something like tailing, no matter how thick-skinned Maxwell was, it was impossible for him to bring his companions. Master, do you want to go to 54545 Outer Gate to take a look? After a brief consideration, Wu Ming nodded. I can go take a look. But at this moment, a piece of parchment floated in from the window and automatically flew to the coffee table in front of Wu Ming. The parchment was engraved with the emblem of two goddesses, which was the symbol of 1,000 eyes. Could it be White Yiksha? Wu Ming picked up the parchment and turned it around to read. Master, is there a new situation? Letitia asked worriedly. Vera also looked at Wu Ming curiously. Wu Ming raised his head and looked at Letitia and Vera. The Southern District was attacked again. 2105380 Outer Gate, Thous and Eyes, Branch. Although White Yiksha was sitting on the mattress like the previous few times, White Yiksha now had his eyes closed and his arms crossed in front of his chest. He looked like he had a headache. Blackish-purple ripples appeared and White Yiksha immediately opened his eyes. Wu Ming, Letitia, and Vera walked out of the portal. Vera? I didn't expect you to kidnap her to the Eastern District. White Yiksha looked particularly surprised before revealing a gentlemanly smile. She didn't expect Wu Ming to bring Vera to the Eastern District. Vera looked at White Yiksha in disdain before shrinking behind Wu Ming and tugging at his sleeve. How's the Southern District now, White Yiksha? Wu Ming ignored White Yiksha's frivolity and immediately asked. Don't worry. Sit. Seeing Wu Ming's arrival, White Yiksha changed his previous demeanor and became very calm. Seeing White Yiksha's calm expression, Wu Ming didn't look anxious at all and sat down facing White Yiksha. White Yiksha spoke first. To be honest, I didn't expect you to come so quickly. After all, Wu Ming had gone to the Northern District to investigate. On the parchment that White Yiksha sent to no name, he only wrote that he saw a trip to the 2105380 Outer Gates, Thous and Eyes, Branch. Then I'm really sorry, Wu Ming replied indifferently. This made White Yiksha glare at Wu Ming. Forget it. Let's talk business. The Southern District was attacked again. Chapter 822. After the absolute evil clones in the South District were defeated by the Dragonhorn Griffin Lion, the Harvest Festival couldn't continue. Although Wu Ming did not know how many absolute evil clones attacked the South District, the number should be about the same as the absolute evil clones that attacked the East District. If Wu Ming had not used his authority, he would not have been able to deal with such a number. Therefore, Wu Ming had expected the South District to be unable to continue the Harvest Festival. Of course, because the Harvest Festival was about to end, the organizer, the Dragonhorn Griffin Lion, directly moved the Harvest Festival to the Midnight Festival. The Midnight Festival was like a party after a large-scale event. In short, it was a summary. However, Wu Ming could not help but ask about this. Wait a minute, absolute evil clones aren't a small matter, right? Why does the Dragonhorn Griffin Lion want to continue the Midnight Festival? The absolute evil clones were one of the final human trials. Wu Ming did not think that the Dragonhorn Griffin Lion was unaware of this. As for Maxwell and the others, not to mention that they had an unknown number of absolute evil clones, the other party was in existence that attacked the entire box. Facing such an enemy, even White Yiksha was troubled, yet the Dragonhorn Griffin Lion still had the mood to continue the Midnight Festival. Actually, this Harvest Festival is similar to the Fire Dragon Birth Festival in the North District. It's a grand event for the Dragonhorn Griffin Lion Alliance's speaker to become the ruler of the South District. Naturally, it can't end carelessly. Wu Ming nodded and said thoughtfully. I was negligent. Although Wu Ming did not care much about his reputation, it was indeed a matter of importance to the collective. However, it's also related to the fact that the South District did not suffer any losses, White Yiksha added. Ahem, that's a digression. Immediately after, White Yiksha coughed and began the overall story. Just after you left for the North District, the South District was attacked again. It was still absolute evil clones. White Yiksha took out a piece of parchment and placed it in front of Wu Ming with a serious expression. Wu Ming picked up the parchment and read it. The parchment contained information from the South District. The transmission method was the same as when White Yiksha sent the parchment to No Name. How is that possible? Does he have an endless supply of absolute evil doppelgangers? Letitia was shocked. It would have been understandable if other fiend kings had attacked. After all, it was excusable for them to attack while the people in the South District were exhausted after dealing with Absolute Evil's avatar. However, it was still Absolute Evil's doppelganger that attacked him. This proved that the ones who came to attack this time were still the same group of people who had caused the attacks in the 4 districts of Boxing: East, South, West and North. Furthermore, the other party even had a clone of Absolute Evil. After all, the number of Absolute Evil clones at the end of the Fire Dragon's birth ritual, as well as the Absolute Evil clones that attacked the North, South, East, and West districts, was already quite terrifying. However, even after exhausting so many of Absolute Evil's doppelgangers, the other party still had reserves. How could Letitia not be surprised? I think so too, but this is the truth. White Yiksha sighed helplessly. Fortunately, the members of No Name listened to Master Ru's words and didn't return. You should know that it wasn't just 16 knights and the others. Ren was also in the limelight in the battle against Absolute Evil's clone. White Yiksha opened his folding fan and gently fanned himself. He was very satisfied with No Name gaining reputation again. I see. It must be Argel's doing. Wu Ming was relieved. He then put down the parchment. After Wu Ming sold off Luo's community, Perseus, Wu Ming, who did not need Argel's strength, handed Argel to Ren. Ren's gift could ignore the difference in strength between the contractor, and perfectly control the contractor. After all, Argel was the astral spirit, the leader of the 3 strongest races in Boxing: East. When Argel was at his peak, even if he was not comparable to White Yiksha, he was already extremely powerful. In the end, Argel was bound by the so-called inheritance. In the end, he lost his rationality and had a large number of shackles placed on his body. He was then used by the profligate Luos. As there were too many shackles on Argel, removing them all at once would cause irreversible damage to Argel. Therefore, Ren's gift could not completely restore Argel to his peak. However, Argel's combat strength in Ren's hands was much stronger than when he was in Luo's hands. Furthermore, Wu Ming also believed that sooner or later, Argel would return to his peak in Ren's hands. That's right. Argel's demon eyes of petrification have a natural restraining effect on Absolute Evil's doppelgangers. It's all thanks to Ren. I just received news that the Absolute Evil doppelgangers that attacked again have all been eliminated. White Yiksha said as he took out another parchment. After all, Argel's demon eyes of petrification could also petrify the blood of the Absolute Evil doppelgangers. In that case, there would be no blood proliferation. So you're keeping us in suspense, White Yiksha. Wu Ming did not know whether to laugh or cry. He took the parchment in White Yiksha's hand and looked at it. Although I do have such intentions, cough cough cough. I've also been troubled by the matter of the Absolute Evil doppelgangers. White Yiksha, who quickly changed his words, had a melancholic expression. After all, the enemy has repeatedly attacked the various districts. This is definitely not a simple attack. If it was not a simple revenge on society, then there must be a reason, or a purpose. Obviously, it could not be the former, so it must be the latter. But we have no way of knowing what the other party is trying to do. Letitia sighed. Perhaps it was to confuse people that the other party attacked the 4 districts in the eastern, southern, western, and northern district. Now, they had attacked the southern district again. Moreover, the other party has a teleportation-type gift. It's not easy to catch them. We haven't caught the other party's tail, so we have no idea where to start. Wuming crossed his arms helplessly. If he had known this would happen, Wuming would not have let Maxwell save the man and beast that he had captured. However, Wuming looked at Vera, who was kneeling beside him and tugging at his sleeve. At the moment, he could only rely on Vera. Through Vera, he could find Maxwell and use her to contact him. In the end, Wuming looked at White Yiksha. Since the southern district has been attacked again, you should pay more attention to the eastern district. After all, since the other party could attack the southern district again, it was possible that they could attack the eastern district again. Of course, it was the same for the northern and western districts. Don't worry, leave it to me. However, where are you going? Since Wuming said that, it must be because he was not going to stay in the eastern district. White Yiksha understood that. I'm going to take a look at the northern district again. Wuming stood up and prepared to leave. However, at that moment, a piece of parchment flew in from the window and landed in White Yiksha's hands. White Yiksha's expression changed when he saw the contents of the parchment. The northern district has been attacked again? Chapter 8:23. What? Letitia was alarmed. Vera didn't say a word, but her eyes revealed a hint of worry. Even if she wasn't a Stratum ruler, she still took the safety of the North District very seriously. After all, she was the leader of Willow's Wisp and a member of the North District. Wuming frowned and immediately said, "Tell me the location." "Tell me the location." "I'll be there immediately." Wuming really didn't expect that the North District would be attacked just as he said that the other districts might be attacked. White Yiksha didn't say a word as he threw the parchment to Wuming. Wuming caught the parchment and took a closer look. Has Salamandra's headquarters been attacked? Wuming thought to himself. Indeed. It was now certain that Vera's encounter with Maxwell at the outer gate of 54,545 wasn't a coincidence. Instead, it had been premeditated by the other party. As for Salamandra, it was a 5-digit community and didn't have any high-end combat strength. Just Maxwell alone was enough to give Salamandra a hard time. Furthermore, Maxwell's companions might be there as well. I think the other party is quite premeditated. White Yiksha's expression was somewhat gloomy. By repeatedly attacking the box court, not only did this mean that they didn't take the Stratum Guardians seriously, but it also meant that the other party was on the move. Right on the heels of that, White Yiksha looked at Wuming. Although the letter asks for my assistance, Salamandra is an ally of No Name, and the letter also states that you have already sent a distress letter to No Name. It was true that No Name was an ally of Salamandra, but distant water couldn't quench a nearby fire. It was unlikely that Salamandra didn't understand this principle. Even if Shadora knew that Wuming had a teleportation door, Wuming had never been to the outer gate of 54,545, so the teleportation door couldn't be used. From the looks of it, Salamandra was only asking for help symbolically. They mainly wanted to rely on White Yiksha. The branches of Thous and Eyes were interconnected, and the branches of Thous and Eyes were spread across the 4 districts. Therefore, White Yiksha could move to other districts through the branches. However, White Yiksha couldn't go with Wuming. What if the East District was attacked again the moment they left? Stay in the East District. Also, help me protect No Name. Even without White Yiksha, Wuming had his own means of heading to the North District. Wuming tossed the parchment aside and walked towards the door. Wuming was not a so-called good person. In a situation where he could not protect everyone, he would take a step back and choose to protect his own people. No Name. White Yiksha and ease. Of White Yiksha, of White Yiksha, White Yiksha, White Yiksha's, White Yiksha of S and Eyes, of White of Yak. 3 years ago, when the Infernal Yiksha attacked No Name, White Yiksha should have gone to meet the attack. However, she knew that as a 4-digit number, she didn't have the ability to deal with the infernal Yiksha that attacked No Name. Why was that? 3 years ago, No Name was the largest community in the East District. It had many high-end combat forces. Even a 4-digit number of White Yiksha couldn't deal with No Name. Even so, a infernal Yiksha still attacked No Name. From this, it could be seen that the enemy was very powerful. It was likely to be in the double digits, or at least in the triple digits. White Yiksha naturally wouldn't be afraid of such an enemy in the past. This required White Yiksha to return her godhood and retrieve her spirit spark. However, 3 years ago, White Yiksha hesitated. And it was this hesitation that caused No Name to become what it was now. And White Yiksha felt guilty for 3 years. Black Rabbit's frequent hosting of the gift competition was actually one of White Yiksha's ways of compensating No Name. In the name of White Yiksha, leave the East District and No Name in my hands. That was White Yiksha's former name. It was his name when he was an infernal Yiksha. After nodding, Wuming took Vera and walked out of the room without looking back. In Wuming's opinion, White Yiksha's words were enough. Letitia bowed to White Yiksha and then turned to leave. Gotcha, Letitia closed the door. The sound of the door closing was particularly prominent in the room where only White Yiksha was left. White Yiksha, who was sitting on the cushion, waved his hand. The parchment that Wuming had casually thrown away flew into White Yiksha's hand. 54545 Outer Gate. White Yiksha closed his eyes slightly. It was unknown what he was thinking about. Then, the parchment in White Yiksha's hand instantly burned. White Yiksha waved his hand and the flames burned out. The parchment also burned to ashes. Then, the room returned to silence. Outside the This and Yes branch, Letitia caught up with Wuming. Master, how do you plan to go to the North District? Letitia's question made Wuming stop. After all, even if he used a teleportation door, Wuming could not directly go to the 54545 Outer Gate. He would have to put in more effort. Regarding this problem, I plan to ask Vera for help, Wuming said as he looked at Vera who was still tugging at his sleeve. Vera tilted her head. Her face was expressionless, but Wuming could tell from her eyes that Vera was saying yes. Indeed, we can ask Lady Vera to send us there. Villo could control the realm door and instantly go to the 54545 Outer Gate. And Letitia had also thought of the idea that Wuming had thought of. How about it, Vera? Can you help me? Wuming asked Vera. Vera nodded her little head, indicating that she could. Then, Master, there's no time to lose. Let's set off quickly. After all, the Demon King that attacked the North District could not be resisted by Salamandra alone, not to mention that the attacker might have companions. Moreover, the strongest combat power in the North District had been brought to Wuming's side. The 54545 Outer Gate was very dangerous at the moment. If they delayed for too long, Salamandra might be completely wiped out. However, Wuming rejected Letitia's suggestion. No, Letitia, you stay in No Name. Vera and I will go to the North District. Master? Letitia was confused for a moment. Because she was a maid, Letitia had developed the habit of following her master around. Therefore, Letitia was a little reluctant to not let her go to the North District with Wuming. Wuming reached out and pressed Letitia's head. He rubbed Letitia's beautiful blonde hair. No matter what, No Name has to leave a powerhouse behind. I have no intention of leaving everything to White Yiksha alone. Then, Wuming smiled at Letitia. Our community, can I leave it to you, Letitia? Letitia was momentarily stunned by Wuming's smile, but then, Letitia came back to her senses. The rejections in his heart also vanished. Yes, leave it to me, Master. With a confident expression, Letitia affirmed Wuming's decision. Letitia spread her wings and flew up into the sky. She then flew towards the location of No Name. Finally, Wuming looked at Vera. Please, Vera. You're tuning into the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.